It is family. My mom demanded me to cancel my vacation to watch 6 grandkids. I left for the beach anyway. The Christmas party turned into chaos. My name is Samantha. I am 29. And this was going to be the first Christmas I spent on myself rather than saving for everyone else. Instead, I ended up witnessing my mother grasp her phone, her face drained of color as she gasped. What? This cannot be happening. 6 children cried in the background of the video chat. Toys crash. Someone is weeping because liquid spilled on their wonderful new outfit. On the other end of the line, my mother looked at the photo I had just given her of my beach chair, sunglasses and the aircraft ticket with today's date on it. She had based her ideal vacation on one assumption, the same one my family had relied on for years, that I would discreetly abandon my plans to be the babysitter for all 6 grandchildren while everyone else dressed up and had fun. No payment, no thanks. Only guilt. And you know we couldn't do it without you. But this year, I didn't sacrifice my life to make theirs simpler. I adjusted my plans in a way she never expected. The fact is, this story did not begin with a horrified gasp. It began weeks ago with a phone call that drove me above my limit and made me realize I was done being the family's backup plan. If you've ever been regarded as the automatic babysitter just because you're single or don't have children yet, stick with me until the end, and let me know if you think I went too far, or not far enough. 2 weeks before to that tumultuous video conference, my phone flashed up with my mother's name while I was writing a late report. I had been working extra hours for months to afford a solo Christmas trip that I had planned since the summer. A modest little revolt I had been clutching like a lifeline. I answered the third ring. "Hey Mom." Her joyful voice struck me like a warning siren. "Samantha, perfect timing. I have the most wonderful plan for Christmas, and you are going to love it." My tummy ached. When my mother claimed she had a plan, it usually meant she had one for me. "Okay. What kind of plan?" "You know how your sister and brother are bringing the kids this year," she said, her tone too casual. "And they really deserve a night off. They work so hard. We were thinking you could watch the kids for a couple of days while we get everything ready and have some adult time. It will only be 6 kids, you are so good with them." There it was. 6 kids, 3 under 3. 2 in the midst of a dinosaur phase, as well as a pair of boisterous twins who treated every room like a jungle gym. "Mom, I already told you I booked a trip for Christmas. Remember the beach I've been saving for all year?" She paused for a half-beat before laughing it off. "Well, of course, but you can move that, right? It is not like you have a husband or kids to worry about. You are flexible. Your family needs you." Acceptable. That word burned. What she actually meant was that my time, employment, and existence were all optional in comparison to everyone else's. I looked at my half-packed bag in the corner. Plane tickets are non-refundable, and vacation days have already been authorized. "I do not know, Mom. I really need this break." "You get breaks all the time?" she responded immediately. "They do not. Besides, you love the kids. Think about their little faces when they see you. You would not want to disappoint them, would you?" There it was, the same concoction of shame and obligation Mom had poured for me my entire life. Growing up, I was the go-to person for last-minute babysitting. When my classmates went to parties, I was trapped at home with a sobbing toddler cousin. My co-workers organized surprise weekend vacations, and I was the one to go since a sibling had an emergency, and my mother volunteered me without asking. I paused, my throat tight. "Mom, it is not about the kids. It is about the fact that no one ever asks if I am okay with it. It is just assumed." "Oh, do not be dramatic," she said, her voice losing its charm. "Everyone else has real responsibilities. You are the only one without a family of your own. You should be grateful they trust you with their children. Real obligations, as if my life didn't matter because it wasn't like theirs." Something within me cracked. But rather than fracturing, it sharpened. A cold, unambiguous concept slipped into place. If they considered me as the built-in babysitter, perhaps it was time they discovered what it was like without me. "I cannot promise anything," I responded softly. "I need to think." "You do not have to think," she said quickly. "You know what the right thing is. We are all counting on you." She hung up, knowing that the guilt would work as it always has. I sat there, phone still in hand, heart thumping against my ribs. For the first time, instead of making reasons to get out of my trip, I found myself thinking about something else totally, a question that refused to go away. What if this year I let them experience the chaos they always inflicted on me? I did something I rarely did with my family. I did not respond right away. I let her comments resonate in my ears and then called someone else instead. Rachel didn't bother saying hello. You have the voice you use when your family is being ridiculous, she explained. What happened this time? I told her, pacing my little living room and walking around my bag as if it were evidence of a crime. The months of arranging my vacation, the phone call, my mother's comment about real responsibilities, and how 6 children had become my Christmas. Rachel remained silent for a few minutes after I finished, which was unusual for her. Sam, she finally began. Do you realize they do this every year? I knew. I simply hated having to admit it. She began counting it off year after year. Last Christmas, you skipped your office party to drive 3 hours and watch the twins while everyone else went to a concert. The year before that, you spent New Year's with a fever and 3 toddlers so your sister could get one night out. And remember the wedding you missed because your brother double-booked you as a babysitter? Each recollection flashed through my mind like a little story. Tiny hands tugged on my shirt as my phone flashed with photos of my friends enjoying fun without me. Texts from my mother thanking me, followed by weeks of acting as if nothing had happened. Yeah, I replied quietly. I remember. So why are you still letting them? Rachel inquired. They treat you like a service, not a person. If they truly respected you, they would at least ask, not just assign you. Her words struck harder than any guilt text ever could. Because she was correct. Somewhere along the way, I had become the responsible one, the single one, the one whose plans were always flexible. Maybe I should just say no, I mumbled to myself rather than to her. Or, Rachel added, her voice intensifying, maybe you should stop warning them and let them deal with the consequences. They never give you a heads up before they dump their plans on you. Why are you the one who has to be considerate? I slid onto the couch, chewing my lip. The concept made my stomach turn. Let them experience the turmoil. Allow them to see what I have absorbed for them every holiday. That would be petty, I responded hesitantly. That would be fair, she responded. You're not trying to harm the kids. You're trying to force the adults to act like adults. There's a difference. Later that night, my phone rang again. This time it was the family group chat, complete with confetti emojis and lengthy discussions about our big Christmas preparations. My mother had commented right in the middle of the thread. Samantha has already promised to take all the kids so we can focus on hosting. She is such an angel. We would be lost without her. Promised. I gazed at that single word for so long that it blurred. I hadn't promised anything. I stated I needed to think. In her version of the story, that had become a done deal. My heartbeat calmed, becoming chilly and steady. I watched as my siblings reacted with relief. This is amazing. I really needed this break. Sam, you are a lifesaver. Neither of them asked if I was fine with it. They didn't even consult with me before celebrating. Something inside me eventually snapped, but not in the loud, chaotic way I had feared. It was quieter, as if a knot was unwinding. Fine, I said. You want to pretend I promised? You want to assume I will sacrifice myself again? Then this year, you can celebrate without me for real. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. I typed, deleted, then typed again before sending a message so neutral it almost made me giggle. I got your messages, I'll figure out my schedule and let you know. Out loud I sounded like the reasonable daughter, but internally the plan was already slipping. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fit into their expectations. I was searching for a way out. The following day, during my lunch break, I opened my laptop and glanced at the open tab for my beach rental. For weeks I had been lingering over the payment button, scared my family would talk me out of it. My fear had subsided in comparison to my wrath. I verified the dates again. Check-in on December 23rd. Check-out date, December 27th. My mother wanted me tethered to a couch with 6 sugar-crazed youngsters. I hovered for one final second before clicking confirm. Suddenly the trip became a reality. Not a pipe dream, not a possibility, but a truth. My phone vibrated a few minutes later. It was my mother again. Have you thought about what we talked about? She inquired, bypassing any salutation. I have, I answered, my voice even. I am still working some things out. Well, I already told your sister and brother you would do it, she responded quickly. They are counting on you. We all are. You are the only one who can handle all 6 of them at once. You know how they get. I nearly laughed at the backhanded compliment. We have relied on you for so long. We don't know how to function without you. Mom, I never said yes, I told her. You should not plan around me without asking. You did not say no either, she said sternly. And I knew you would do the right thing once you had time to think. Do not make this difficult. There it was again. That statement, the right thing, implied that there was only one acceptable response, and it included me ending my existence. If I told her about my confirmed reservation now, I knew what would happen. She'd cry. She would talk about sacrifice and family, and how disappointed she was in her daughter for not dropping everything. Then she'd contact every relative and depict me as ungrateful until I gave in just to stop the noise. They never gave me any notice when they needed me. They never questioned how it would affect my career or plans. They simply decided I'd figure it out. So this time, I determined to show them the same civility they had always shown me. None. I am still thinking, I said gently. I will let you know before the holiday. Samantha, she whispered, her voice falling into the low, dangerous range I'd known since childhood. Do not pull anything dramatic. We have a lot riding on this. Your sister already ordered special outfits for the kids so they can take pictures by the tree. We need someone responsible there while we get everything ready. Responsible, sacrificial, and convenient. They actually meant everything they said. I hear you, I replied. I will let you know. When we hung up, I didn't weep. I didn't spiral. Instead, I opened a new document and began typing everything I wanted to say but had never said. All the times I'd missed out. They treated my time as if it were free. All the comments about how I'd understand one day when I had my own family, as if my life didn't matter before then. The list was longer than I'd like to admit. By the time I was done, my hands were trembling, but not from terror. It stemmed from clarity. That night I called Rachel again and read her the list. So, she asked slowly after I finished, what exactly are you going to do? I looked at my bag in the corner, which was now completely packed. I am going on my trip. And your mom? She inquired. I'm going to stop protecting her from the consequences. I said every year she builds this perfect picture of Christmas on my back and pretends the sacrifices are hers. This year, I am going to let everyone see who has actually been carrying the load. Rachel let out a faint whistle. Are you sure you are ready for that fallout? No, yes, maybe. My emotions moved like sand, but beneath it all, something solid formed. I am tired of being the only one who is scared of upsetting people. I responded. If they can casually uproot my plans, they can handle a little surprise. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, another question arose, one that I knew many of those watching would understand. How many times are you expected to light yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm before leaving the matchbox? I didn't have a complete answer yet, but I knew I was done burning. Christmas Eve came faster than I imagined. For once, instead of waking up to a long list of snack and sleep instructions, I awoke to my alarm and the soothing hum of my suitcase wheels waiting at the door. My flight was at 10 o'clock. My mother still expected me to be at her place by noon. I made coffee, showered, and dressed in the least festive outfit I owned, simply to remind myself that this was my holiday, not theirs. Before I grabbed my keys, I entered the family group chat once more. New messages had accumulated overnight. Pictures of half-wrapped gifts, my sister moaning about glitter everywhere, and my brother complaining about last-minute purchasing. In the midst of it all, my mother had written, Samantha will be here tomorrow to take the kids so we can finish everything. Thank goodness for her. I do not know what we would do without that girl. The words made my jaw clench, but they also strengthened my resolve. I established a fresh private conversation with my mother. My fingers shook, but I continued typing. I wanted to remind you that I never agreed to watch the kids this year. I will be out of town over Christmas. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday, but I will not be babysitting. I stared at the message for a long moment before clicking submit before I could talk myself out of it. Almost immediately, type dots appeared. Out of town, she wrote. What are you talking about? You knew we were counting on you. You can't just change your mind now. A peculiar serenity came over me. I grabbed a snapshot of my travel confirmation, including the date and destination, and then took a quick photo of my packed suitcase by the door, with my beach hat hanging on top. I am not changing my mind, I replied. I told you weeks ago that I had plans. I'm just not canceling them this time. No emojis or apologies. There was a prolonged pause. Then another influx of mails. You are being selfish. You are ruining Christmas. And you know your sister and brother cannot handle 6 kids alone. Each charge came in, but instead of sinking, it bounced off like rain on a glass. Perhaps some of those hearing might argue I should have told them sooner. I should have warned them more plainly. But how do you warn those who won't listen until it benefits them? I set my phone to silent, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out the door. The airport was bustling with Christmas pandemonium, but for once, it did not feel like my responsibility to manage. I checked my bag, went through security, and sat near the gate wearing my headphones. The low murmur of announcements combined with the thump of my heart. I gave in and checked my phone about half an hour before departing. The group conversation had exploded. Wait. What do you mean Samantha is not coming? Mom? I thought you said she promised. You said she was fine with it. Then my name appeared. Sam, are you serious? Tell me this is a joke. I took a deep breath and put a single message into the group chat rather than responding to each individual. I am not a built-in babysitter. I love you all, but I am not spending every holiday taking care of 6 kids while everyone else gets a break. I told Mom I had other plans. I am on my way out of town. You will need to figure something else out. I hit send and watched as the little message read notifications stacked up one after another. For a whole minute, no one responded. Then my mom responded, but not in the group chat. She called. I let it ring a few times before answering. I could hear sounds in the background, including wrapping paper, television, and at least one child screaming. How could you do this to me? She asked, skipping the greeting. Everyone is coming over tonight. The kids are already here. Your sister and your brother have dinner reservations. Do you know how much work I have? I cannot watch all these kids and host at the same time. You should have thought about that before you planned everything around me without my consent, I was saying gently. That trip is more important than your family, she retorted. That trip is more important than being taken for granted, I told him. There was a moment of astonished quiet. In the background, a toddler shouted for juice. Another person started crying. Someone knocked something over. This cannot be happening, she said to herself rather than to me. I told everyone you would be here. That is the problem, I answered. You told everyone what I would do without ever asking me. They called my group chat message drama. They said I blindsided them. But for the first time, it was not my job to smooth things over, to rush in and rescue everyone from the consequences of their own planning. When my boarding group was summoned, I stood up, rolled my bag toward the gate, and spoke the words I had been afraid to say for years. I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas, I told her. But this year, you will have to figure it out without me. I hung up before she could respond. As I boarded the plane, the last thing I saw on my screen was a fresh photo from my sister in the family chat, which appeared a few minutes later. 6 children wearing mismatched jammies, one weeping and one covered in cookie dough. My mother is in the background, her hand over her mouth and eyes wide open. Even with the shaky photo, I could almost hear her gasping. What? This cannot be happening. For once I didn't rush to make things simpler. I set my phone to airplane mode and chose myself instead. When the plane landed and my phone joined to the network, it lighted up like a slot machine, showing missed calls, voicemails, and 37 unread messages in the family chat. My thumb briefly hovered over airplane mode again. I could have turned everything off and disappeared into the sound of waves, but another part of me, the one who had always cleaned up the mess, needed to see what happened when I didn't. I opened the family chat. The thread resembled a slow-motion car collision. First, my siblings sent me confusing messages when my mother eventually told them I wasn't coming. What do you mean Sam backed out? I thought you said she promised. Wait, so who is watching the kids tonight? The debate changed. You told us it was all handled. You said she agreed weeks ago. Mom, we booked everything based on what you said. For once the fury was not directed at me, it was directed at her. In the midst of the text storm, my mother kept repeating the same line. She changed her mind at the last minute. I do not know what got into her. My jaw was clenching. I'd not changed my mind. I had finally acted on it. Surprising someone is not the same as betraying them. My family had never considered my differences. A video call appeared on my screen. Mom. I almost ignored it, but groaned and responded, more out of curiosity than obligation. Her heated, panicked face took up the entire screen. The living area behind her resembled the aftermath of a toy store explosion. Wrapping paper, plastic packaging, half-eaten cookies, 2 children wrestling on the floor, and 1 wailing on the sofa. A cartoon blared from the TV at maximum volume, but no one was watching it. "What do you think you are doing, Samantha?" she demanded before I could say hello. "Your sister is in the shower, the twins are fighting over a tablet. Your brother is trying to get the baby down for a nap. And your father is at the store. We are drowning here. You cannot be serious about this little stunt." "Stunt?" I almost laughed. "I'm lying in a lounge chair," I said calmly, angling the camera just enough for her to see the pool's edge, palm trees and blue sky. "I told you I was going on vacation. I am finally doing it." She peered at the TV as if she were looking at a crime scene. "You sent a picture of your luggage, but I thought you were being dramatic. You are really there?" "Yes," I answered. "I am really here." A scream echoed behind her. One of the twins shoved the other, and someone collided with the coffee table. A plastic cup landed on the floor and rolled away from view. My mother flinched but did not turn away from the camera. "You should be here," she retorted. "This is your responsibility." "Why?" I inquired calmly. "Because I am the only one without a spouse. Because I do not have kids of my own yet? Because you decided that made my time less valuable?" She opened her mouth before closing it again. I saw the calculating in her eyes, the way she constantly rewrote history to make herself the victim. "You know, I cannot do all of this by myself," she replied, reverting to the phrase she had used my entire life. "I am not as young as I used to be." "I thought you understood. I thought you cared." "That is the thing," I said. "I do care. I have cared so much that I have lost count of the holidays, weekends and nights I gave up to make sure everyone else was okay, but I am done caring alone." She blinked. For the first time she appeared less angry and more terrified. Not of the kids or the mess, but of something else. She realized her favorite safety net was not where she had left it. "Sam, you are punishing me," she said quietly. "Punishing your own mother." I let the silence linger, listening to the chaos behind her. I was expected to listen to the holiday soundtrack every year. "Maybe I am," I admitted finally. "Or maybe I am just refusing to keep punishing myself. Do you have any idea how it feels to always be the one expected to cancel? To be told everyone else has real responsibilities while you are treated like a spare part?" "You are twisting this," she protested softly. "We just needed your help. Families help each other." "Families respect each other too," I claimed. "When was the last time you asked what I wanted for Christmas? Not what you needed me to do, but what I wanted." She wasn't responding. Someone called for her in the kitchen. The infant began sobbing again. My brother's voice cut through the backdrop, agitated. "Mom, the twins just dumped juice everywhere." My mother's eyes shifted away from the camera. For a brief instant I could see raw panic there. Not only was she upset over the mess, but she would also have to admit to everyone that she had bet with my life and lost. "This conversation is not over," she stated as she diverted her gaze to the chaos. "You have no idea what you are doing." "Oh, I do," I replied. "For once I am letting you deal with the situation you created. You told everyone I promised something I never agreed to. You built your plans on that lie. I am just not covering for it." Her mouth constricted. "You are going to regret this when you realize you have pushed your family away." The funny thing was, I had already spent years feeling pushed to the margins of my own family. Useful, just when they needed it. "Maybe," I replied gently. "Or maybe you are going to regret realizing how much you have taken me for granted." I ended the phone before she could respond. For a time, guilt rose up, familiar and crushing. I almost called her back. I almost promised to cut my trip short, dash home, and patch things back up. Then I looked up. A child splashed in the shallow part of the pool, squealing with delight, while his parents watched from adjacent chairs, laughing and relaxing as they took turns wading in the water. No one seemed fatigued. Nobody appeared to have been duped into coming. I leaned back and closed my eyes, allowing the light to warm my face. How many of us grow up thinking that being a good daughter entails being constantly available? How many of us mistake exploitation for love because it is cloaked in terms like family first and sacrifice? The messages continued flowing, both angry and guilty. A photograph of my sister in a wrinkled clothing, holding a child on each hip. Her hair was half done, and her look was furious. My brother's half-typed apology transformed into another accusation midway through. For once, I didn't answer. I let the thread go wild without me. And, as terrible as that may seem, it felt more like equilibrium finally snapping into place. If you always save everyone from the fire, how will they ever learn to stop playing with matches? That night, while my family hurried to reschedule dinners, cancel plans, and swap shifts watching the kids, I watched the sunset bleed orange and pink across the ocean. I requested room service. Rather than complaining, I listened to the ocean. For the first time in years, I had my own Christmas Eve. The consequences occurred somewhere in a house full of crying children and broken expectations. I didn't hear my mother's voice again until 2 weeks after Christmas. The family group chat was a battlefield for the first several days after my trip. My siblings battled over who was to blame when their plans failed. My mother attempted to redirect the story back to me being unpredictable and over-emotional, but some of the messages slipped through her grasp. "Why did you tell us she promised when she did not?" my brother said at one point. "You always do this," my sister continued. "You volunteer her, then act surprised when she gets upset." Watching that unfold from a distance seemed like watching the curtain finally fall on a play in which I had been cast despite not understanding the script. For years I was so busy playing the role of trustworthy daughter that I didn't realize I was also the scapegoat, the pre-programmed answer whenever my mother overpromised. After New Year's the conversation became quiet. No Merry New Year from my mother, there are no photographs of the kids clinking plastic glasses of apple juice. Just silence. Rachel raised her eyebrows as I informed her. "So," she replied, stirring her coffee. "Are they icing you out because you set a boundary?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe they finally do not know what to do with me now that guilt stopped working." The call arrived on a random Tuesday evening while I was sorting laundry. My phone vibrated, and there it was again. "Mom." I nearly let it go to voicemail. Then I imagined all the folks who would be listening to this story and silently screaming at their screens. "Pick up. Make them say it out loud," I replied. This time her voice was softer and quieter, as if she had run out of steam. "Hi, Sam." "Hi." There was a long gap. I could image her in the kitchen, her fingers twisting the phone cord out of habit, despite the fact that it had been cordless for years. "I wanted to talk," she added without yelling or the children crying. "Just talk." I sat at my table. "Okay, I am listening." She took a breath. I could hear the effort in it. "Christmas was a disaster," she said. "Your brother and sister fought all night. The kids were out of control. I had to cancel dinner. Your father ended up cooking frozen pizzas while I tried to get frosting out of the living room rug." Previously that description would have made me feel guilty. It now seemed like a description of reality, which I had been insulating them from for years. "I am sorry it was so hard," I said, and I meant it. "But I am not sorry I was not there." "I know," she replied gently. "That is what scares me." Her voice trembled. "Do you know what your Aunt Margaret said when I told her what happened?" I didn't answer. My mother went on. "She asked me why I thought it was your job to fix everything. She said, 'I have been doing that to you since you were a teenager, making you responsible for everyone else's mess.'" I blinked. Aunt Margaret, of all persons, had spoken that. The woman who sent me Christmas cards including Bible texts about respecting your parents. "What did you say?" I inquired. "I told her that you are reliable, that you have always been the strong one, and that you do not have as much going on." My mother continued slowly, as if she were hearing her own reasons for the first time. "And she looked at me and said, 'Or maybe you just assumed she did not matter as much because she did not complain.'" The stillness that followed was deafening. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I didn't notice how it sounded until I heard myself say it aloud. My mother was whispering. "Like your life was less important than your brother's and your sister's because it was simpler to use you." Apply. The word landed between us like a stone. "You could have just asked," I replied gently. "You could have treated my time like it mattered. You could have given me the choice." "I know," she replied. "And I'm sorry." It wasn't the dramatic, tear-filled apology that movies teach us to expect. It was smaller, rougher around the edges, almost awkward. But there was something genuine about it. I am sorry I made you feel like you were only valuable when you were doing something for us, she said afterwards. I am sorry I told everyone you promised when you did not. I wanted so badly for Christmas to be perfect that I used you as a guarantee. I choked on my food. You did not just do that this year, I corrected you. You have been doing that my whole life. I know, she replied again. And this time, the words sounded heavier. Your brother and sister told me I put too much on you, that I always assumed you would step in. Your sister said she never even thought to question it because that is just how things were. That is how I raised all of you to see it. A part of me wanted to retort, asking why it took a wrecked Christmas and a public humiliation for her to realize it. Another part of me recognized that saying this to her felt like taking a leap of faith. So, what now? I inquired. You apologize, I forgive you. And then next Christmas I am back on kid duty while you book dinner reservations. No, she replied hastily. That is not what I want anymore. I do not want you here out of obligation. I do not want you resenting us while you put on a smile. I want you here because you choose to be. And if that means you say no sometimes, her voice trailed off before she pushed the words out, then I need to learn to live with that. There it was. The actual shift. Not an apology, just an acknowledgement that I would not always bend. I am not saying I will never help, I said. I love the kids. I love spending time with them. But if you want me to babysit, you ask. You do not assume. You do not build your plans around me without my consent. And if I say no, that is the end of it. No guilt trips, no real responsibilities speeches, no smear campaign in the family chat. She let out a nervous breath. That is fair. Also, I explained. If it is babysitting and not just family time, you pay me like you would pay anyone else you hired to watch 6 kids. On the other end of the phone, I could practically feel her flinch. She did have the money, but this was the first time I had put a clear price on the labor she had been receiving for free. I can do that, she finally replied. If we ask you to babysit, we will pay you. My 5-year-old self would have backed away at that time, frightened of pushing too hard. The version of myself who had observed 6 kids on a TV while lying by a pool felt something different. One more thing, I said. If you ever tell anyone I promised something I did not, we are done. I mean it. I will not spend another decade cleaning up lies you told to make yourself look like the perfect hostess. She was silent for a long time. That is not who I want to be. She murmured finally, her voice quiet. I do not like the way I sounded this year. I do not like the way you had to hurt us to get me to listen. But I guess, she concluded slowly, I guess I left you with no other choice. I didn't respond right away because the reality is that's exactly what happened. I'd spent years being moderate, diplomatic and agreeable. It wasn't until I disappeared that they realized how much I had been holding up. Sam? She asked softly. Do you think you can forgive me? Forgiveness is a complicated thing, I responded softly. It is not a switch you flip. It is a boundary you maintain even when people are sorry. I can forgive you, I replied. But I am not going to forget. And I am not going back to being who I was before Christmas. I would not ask you to, she said. We talked for a little longer about work, the kids, and how my brother had to cancel his expensive dinner and ended up eating takeout in the kitchen as the twins fought over a broken toy. I won't lie. A small selfish part of me liked the image. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because their comfort did not come at the expense of my tiredness. We concluded the call with a truce, not a fairy tale. There were no grand statements or pledges of a beautiful future. Just a calm agreement that things would change, and that if they did not, I would walk away again. This time, no warning. Weeks later, when my sister wrote, "We are thinking of doing a family barbecue in the spring. No babysitting, just hanging out. You in?" I trusted her. For the first time she sounded like she was welcoming me as a person, rather than as coverage. Maybe that is the true vengeance. Nor screaming, nor dramatic disownment, but forcing individuals to reconstruct their lives without expecting you are the foundation on which they may stand for free. I'm not sure how next Christmas will look. Perhaps I'll be there drinking hot cocoa and joking with my nieces and nephews as my siblings take turns putting the kids to bed. Maybe I'll be on another trip, watching the waves sweep in while sending a nice Merry Christmas text and nothing else. I do know this. They now realize that if they want me in their lives, they must treat me as an equal, not a resource. In one terrible holiday, they experienced how heavy the load is when I am not around to carry it. And my mother, who previously exclaimed, "This cannot be happening," now understands that her flawless plans fail without my agreement, not my obedience. So tell me, was I cruel for taking a step back and allowing my family to experience the havoc they had always thrown at me? Or was this the only way to get them to regard me as more than just a built-in babysitter? Would you have gone farther? Or do you believe I drew the line precisely where it was supposed to? My sister humiliated my son bastard on Christmas. When she crossed the line again, I evicted her. Karma struck when she got pregnant with no partner. If your sister labeled your child a bastard in front of the whole family, how would you respond? It wasn't until my sister made fun of my 10-year-old son on Christmas night that I realized how important blood relatives were. My faith was destroyed after that day. She paid a very high price 8 months later. Karma, so the saying goes, spares no one. Until I saw it with my own eyes, I didn't believe it. I want to thank you for listening to my tale today. Before I go into the specifics, I pray you find calm and peace with every day that goes by. Hi there everybody. I'm Cooper, a 42-year-old Denver-based construction project manager. Christmas night, when people typically get together to exchange words of love and appreciation, is when the tale I'm presenting today took place 2 years ago. However, it turned into an unforgettable turning point for every member of the Carter family, where tolerance and silence had persisted for too long and served as the catalyst for a conflict that no one anticipated. I must first discuss Jude, my son, who is 10 years old. Since my ex-wife Rachel departed with her lover 7 years ago, the child has been everything to me. Before Jude could even comprehend why his mother was no longer returning home, she left him when he was just 3 years old. Because Rachel was known to be unfaithful, some family members used to question Jude's biological status. I used to become really annoyed by the sly glances and inconspicuous inquiries like, "Who does the kid look like?" However, I can tell that Jude is my son without a paternity test. The real meaning of parenthood, in my opinion, is the unwavering love I have for my child. Jude has been loved by my parents, Sebastian and Sienna Carter, since the beginning. Mom has a special bond with the child. She always adds, "Every child is a blessing." My parents never treated their grandson any differently, despite some relatives' doubts and whispers. However, my sister Reagan is the only one who has never come to terms with that. My 35-year-old sister is unmarried and constantly changing jobs at different manicure salons. She has also been residing in my Capitol Hill, Denver apartment for nearly 3 years without paying any rent. I assumed it was just siblings supporting one another through difficult times. In retrospect, I realize what a fool I was. Christmas evening at my parents' place 2 years ago. Jude offered to assist Granny with the dishwashing in the kitchen after supper. While they worked together, the child was humming Jingle Bells in a low voice, and they were both giggling and making jokes. My phone kept buzzing while I was chatting with Aunt Phoebe in the living room. My heart felt like it was being squeezed when I opened it. Reagan shared a video of Jude doing the dishes next to Grandma in the 12-person family group chat. The old woman now has someone to wait on her, according to the caption, "Bastard should serve. At least it knows its place." I felt blood rush to my face as soon as I blinked many times to check if I was dreaming. I surveyed the living area. Everyone's faces had gone white, and they were all clutching their phones. However, this brutality wasn't unexpected. It had become ingrained in my sister's subconscious like a habit, elevating her to the position of protector of the Carter family's purity. Jude, in her opinion, was the stain that had to be revealed in public. Reminiscences of all the times Reagan prodded Jude continued playing in my mind like a reminder the instant I watched her giggling with joy while staring at her phone screen, anticipating some fun in the family group chat. 5 years prior, Jude smashed a glass on Thanksgiving when he was just 6 years old. The child was afraid. He glanced at me with red eyes, as though he was worried about receiving a reprimand. However, I wasn't the first to speak. Reagan was the one. This sentence was lightly dropped by her. How would he know how to hold things correctly if he didn't have a mother to educate him? "Come on, Reagan," Dad murmured with a groan. "Get it cleaned up." No criticism. He said nothing to defend his grandson. I suppressed my rage since I didn't want to generate a commotion on a holiday. 3 years ago, Christmas was even better. Jude's face lit up with excitement as he showed the entire family his A on the arithmetic test. Reagan said this while casting a sidelong glance. He must be just good at acting, like his mother. I began to see a hard reality at that point. Peace was more important to my family than a child's safety. Additionally, by being silent all the time, I contributed to the issue. However, the March incident was the final straw. The entire family got together for dinner at my parents' place on the day of Mom's birthday. Jude had spent a whole week getting ready to sketch a painting of the two of them holding hands while strolling through a park as a present for Grandma. "Do you think Grandma will like it?" the anxious child kept asking me. Jude's mother was moved and gave him a tight embrace when he showed her the image. Drawing this badly and still daring to give it as a gift must be his mom's genes, everything half done. Reagan chuckled mockingly from the other side of the table as Jude's cheeks flushed and his eyes filled with tears. With his hands clenched around his shirt, the child hung his head. I had never seen my son's pain so obviously before. The anguish of a child old enough to realize he was being humiliated replaced the bewilderment of a child who doesn't comprehend. I got up immediately and dragged Reagan out to the front porch. "I'm warning you for the last time," I replied, looking directly into her eyes. "Don't blame me for going too far if you say another thing about my son like that." Reagan was terrified at the time. "You're living in my apartment and eating with my money. What right do you think you have?" A fish out of water with blinking eyes and a stammering mouth. She was well aware that she would have nowhere to go if she were expelled from the apartment. She apologized half-heartedly and pledged to keep quiet. I wanted to believe that there was still some conscience in that blood, so I trusted her. Reagan remained silent for the next 9 months. I even began to believe that I had been too hard on my sister and that perhaps she was simply careless rather than evil. But in reality, Reagan was just waiting for her opportunity. She felt that night was the ideal moment, and everything burst in a way no one had anticipated. She still assumed the entire family shared her opinions, but no one dared to express them. I was genuinely unable to remain composed after that line of thought. I once pulled my sister's hair when I was 12 because she had stolen my savings to purchase chocolates. However, I've grown out of my impetuous childhood. I've developed self-control and learned to act like an adult in every situation. As I waited for responses from the group chat, Reagan propped her feet up on the couch and covered her mouth with her hand, trying to contain her laughter. I thought, this crazy woman must want to meet God early today. She most likely wouldn't have survived that room if it weren't for the family members gathered around the living room with the warm Christmas tree. Someone outpaced me just as I was ready to get up and head straight to Reagan. Mom's face was white with rage as she emerged from the kitchen, phone in hand. She was standing next to Jude in the kitchen when she read the message. She moved swiftly and decisively. Even the Christmas music on the speaker seemed to become softer as the whole living room went silent. Mom slapped the phone down on the table with a loud thud as soon as she got to Reagan. Then she met my sister's eyes directly. Her voice was so icy that it sent shivers down my spine. "You explained to me? The old lady has someone to wait on her now. You wrote that, didn't you?" she said. Reagan, who sat up straight and lost her smile in response to her mother's rage. She stumbled back. When Mom heard that response, she nodded slowly. "Mom, I was joking." Everyone understands that when she nods, she's attempting to control her rage. Then she laughed, a sour, dry laugh, and went on making jokes. "You're 35 years old, living off your brother's apartment, leeching off this family for how many years, and you think you have the right to joke like that?" Her tone began to increase. Mom moved in closer, gesturing to Reagan's face with her finger. In an attempt to defend herself to her mother, Reagan sputtered. "You called your mother an old lady. You called your mother's grandson a bastard in front of 12 family members." She was about to say, "Mom, I was just joking. Everyone misunderstood what I meant." But she stopped short. Mom shouted at my sister and slapped her fist on the table, causing the glasses to shake. "Shut up, stupid joke." The entire living room went cold. Aunt Phoebe set down the wine glass she was holding. Uncle Clara got up and took a step back. In my 42 years of life, I had never witnessed Mom lose her temper like that. Mom inhaled deeply after the outburst. Then she started whispering instead of yelling. And the whisper was far more terrifying than the shouting. From the time Jude was born, I held him. Jude had a fever, so I remained up late. Whenever Cooper was working on a project, I would come get my grandson from school. Ever since he uttered his first words, Jude has referred to me as Grandma. She hesitated, tears beginning to pour, but these were tears of intense rage rather than weakness. "And you? What have you done? What have you contributed to this family besides sitting there judging others?" Mom clenched her teeth and asked Reagan. Dad got up from the armchair by the fireplace immediately after Mom finished speaking. He approached Mom, stood by her, and placed his hand on her shoulder. He continued to my sister. All these years I stayed quiet because I thought you were just thoughtless, that you'd understand eventually. I was wrong. You're not thoughtless, you're evil. He gazed at Reagan, his eyes as cold as ice in a Colorado winter. Reagan began to cry as he heard his father's accusation. I had witnessed the same tears every time she got caught causing problems. She turned to face me, her voice shaking, and she begged, "Cooper, say something." I simply moved closer, stood directly in front of her, and interrupted her right away, my voice icy. "What do you want me to say? I warned you in the kitchen of this house 9 months ago." Dad went on, his voice still steady but thick as stone. "I made it clear that if you touched my son one more time, don't blame me. Did you think I was kidding? Rachel is Rachel's business. If she was messing around, that's her problem. But Jude is our grandson. The kid does not fault adult business." Reagan searched the living room for a supporter as the entire family closed in on her. Aunt Aurora, Mom's sister, averted her gaze and pretended to gaze out the window at the light snow falling outside. Uncle Clara went out to smoke on the porch after shaking his head in displeasure. When she realized she was all alone and that nobody was there by her side, Reagan's tears abruptly gave way to screams. She leaped to her feet and yelled at the entire family, her face flushed with anger. How many men did Rachel have sex with? Why? Why is everyone defending that kid? And whose child is he? Why won't anyone confront reality? I felt blood rush to my face as soon as she finished speaking, and I moved so close that I nearly touched my sister's face. "Say it again," I said in a hushed voice, word by word, to Reagan. "I have one more thing to say about my son. I swear to God, today will be your last day, Reagan." In response to that warning, Reagan became silent and recoiled. She noticed something in my eyes that she had never seen before. Just when the tension was at its worst, Dad spoke up in a terrible yet calm voice. "You sleep at a hotel tonight," he told Reagan. Dad said, "We'll talk to you tomorrow morning, but right now, I don't want to see your face in this house." Mom nodded and wiped away her tears, adding to Reagan, "Go before I say things I'll regret." Reagan got up, her legs trembling, and she reached for her purse. "Mom, it's snowing outside," she said in a weak, beseeching voice, trying to save the day before she could leave. Mom interrupted her in a chilly tone, telling Reagan, "You'd best leave before I forget you're my daughter." Reagan stood there looking pale, then stealthily picked up her purse and made her way to the door without anybody seeing. Jude heard the noise and ran out of the kitchen just as the door was closing behind Reagan. He stood at the kitchen door, looking around the living room, his eyes bewildered, seeing Grandma crying, Grandpa's face red with rage, and Dad breathing heavily. He approached me, gave my sleeve a light tug, and said in a low voice, "Dad, what happened? Aunt Reagan left, but why? Grandma is crying, but why?" The 10-year-old child had just finished doing the dishes with his grandmother and hadn't even had time to comprehend why the happy Christmas evening had abruptly devolved into this. Upon seeing my son, all of my wrath vanished, to be replaced with a searing pain in my chest. "It's nothing, son," I whispered to Jude as I crouched at his level and tried to remain composed. "Aunt Reagan had to go since she had something to do. Let's spend a little more time here with Grandpa and Grandma, and then head home." "All right." Mom came up and gave Jude a tight hug, her voice choking as she said, "I'm sorry, sweetie, I adore you, I will always love you. Keep it in mind." The child's eyes were those of a child used to not getting explanations, used to accepting things he didn't understand, and that made my heart ache more than any of Reagan's taunts. Jude nodded dutifully and didn't ask for more. An hour later, I drove Jude back to our apartment in Denver's Highlands neighborhood. Jude sat silently in the back seat staring out the window for a while, when he abruptly asked me, "Dad, what does bastard mean?" The I-25 road was empty, with light snow falling on both sides. Earlier, I heard people saying that. When I heard my son's query, my hands were so tightly gripping the steering wheel that they hurt. "That's a horrid word that decent people never use. And you're not like that," I said, trying to swallow the lump in my throat as I glanced at the child in the rearview mirror. "You will always be my son." The boy didn't ask any more questions, but I knew the question would be with my son for a long time, like an unseen scar that his aunt had just carved into my child's psyche. "No one has the right to say otherwise," Jude said, nodding before turning to watch the snow fall outside the window. After 2 days, I decided to do what I had warned about 9 months earlier. That night, Mom, who had always thought that there should be a shared space to connect family members, deleted the family group chat with 12 people. Perhaps she realized that some things can't be fixed with a few goodnight messages once they've been broken. I don't know if my sister went back to the Downing Street apartment that I had purchased as an investment after that night, but she lived there for nearly 3 years. Without paying any rent, and to be honest, I didn't care anymore. All I needed to do was keep her away from my son. My parents video called Jude non-stop during the 3 days off after Christmas, perhaps out of concern that the child would believe that his grandparents were also upset with him. Fortunately, Jude was able to sense the love of his grandparents, and each time they spoke, the child smiled and showed off his new Christmas toys as if the night had never happened. Perhaps this is how my son was able to heal himself through the love of his grandparents. As for me, on the morning of December 27th, I called a locksmith to the apartment and had all the locks changed. I had warned her, but she ignored me, so now it was time to follow through on what I had said. At precisely 10 in the morning my phone rang, and when I answered, Reagan's terrified voice asked, "Cooper, why won't the door lock open?" To her, I simply said, "I changed the locks. You have 2 weeks to relocate your belongings." Reagan asked me again after a little period of silence, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're kicking me out over one joke message? When you need to get in to take things, call me." "I warned you," I replied, sighing. "As you said you would not utter another word." "You lied to me for 9 months, Reagan said, raising her voice and saying, "You're just too sensitive." As I had feared, she went from pleading to blaming more quickly than switching TV channels. Everyone is aware of Rachel's personality. I hung up without saying anything further, and my mother called to let me know what had happened. For the first time in her life, Reagan was completely alone. No brother, no parents, no one at all. Like a pet bird kept in a cage her entire life. Reagan had called both her parents, pleading and crying to return home to Colorado Springs, but my parents were like me in that they wouldn't back down once they got upset. Reagan left the apartment in early January and she vanished from my life without saying goodbye. I assumed that was the end and that we would all go our separate ways, but I was mistaken. 7 months later, life would teach her a lesson that none of us could impart. She was now free to roam the wild forest without any idea where to find food. A new chapter in my life and my son's began the moment the apartment door closed with the new tenant. After Reagan moved out, the apartment on Downing Street was quickly rented again for $1,800 a month, and I used that money to build a college fund. For Jude. I should have done this 3 years ago, but I was too busy caring for my sister who didn't know how to say thank you. My sister's life fell apart. I didn't get in touch with Reagan during the 7 months that followed, but information about her continued to come to me through family members and my mother. She rented a room in Denver's most affordable neighborhood, the Aurora suburbs, which was so small you could hardly turn around and had thin walls that allowed you to hear neighbors fighting every night. After living rent-free for nearly 3 years, she had to count every dollar to make ends meet while working full-time at the nail salon, standing 10 hours a day, and earning a salary that was barely enough to pay rent and buy inexpensive food. Naturally, she continued to post Facebook status updates, which is similar to when your own family turns against you over a joke. She still hadn't learned anything, I thought to myself. While I was busy watching my sister fall apart from a distance, right in my and my son's apartment, another wound was quietly bleeding that I was unaware of. I assumed Jude was okay. The child continued to attend school on a regular basis. No one in the family made any comments. I was completely mistaken. One night in March, Jude fell asleep at his desk, and I went into his room to carry him to bed. The kid's diary was open under the desk lamp. Normally, I never read my son's diary. Jude continued to laugh and joke with friends, and he still brags to me whenever he receives good grades. The child wrote about the word bastard, about questions he didn't know who to ask, about Christmas night, and when Jude stood behind the kitchen door and heard everything the adults said to each other, he understood it all. That night, however, I unintentionally glanced over those scrawled lines, and what I saw left me dumbfounded. However, Jude kept it to himself and didn't tell anyone. I still inquired about my son every day and continued to believe that everything was normal, but how could I know that his aunt had carved a wound into his soul that was invisible to the unaided eye? The other end was silent for a full minute, and no one knew what to say. Despite our best efforts to shield Jude, we adults were unable to undo what the child had heard that evening. I took Jude to orphanages on the weekends to volunteer, and on the way home, I told him about adopted children and families who loved each other more than blood relatives. I didn't know how to explain to my son the harsh words that adults frequently use to hurt each other, so I just learned to spend more time with him. When we were having dinner together one evening in May, Jude abruptly put down his spoon and looked at me with clear but extremely serious eyes. I wasn't sure whether Jude understood what I was trying to say, so I simply learned to try and hope. "Dad, I'm your son," he said. "Dad, isn't that always the case?" My throat constricted upon hearing that query. "Yes, absolutely. Forever," I said to Jude as I pulled back my chair, got up and moved over to give the child a hug while massaging his head. "No one can change that," Jude said, nodding before carrying on with his meal as though he had just concluded a perfectly ordinary chat. However, the moment I will never forget was doing the dishes after dinner. Jude helped dry plates while standing next to me in silence for a time before looking up and telling me, "You don't need to try so hard. I know you love me, Dad. I love you too." I understood then that my 10-year-old kid had matured well beyond my expectations. He was already capable of healing his own wounds and even consoling his father. In the months that followed, life for my son and me gradually returned to normal, and I pretended to dry my hands on a towel so Jude wouldn't see my stinging eyes. I believed that all the storms had passed once Jude's heart was healed, that Reagan's story was over and that she would get back up and live her life somewhere. However, everything changed 7 months after that terrible Christmas night when I received a call from my mother in July at 9 p.m. Her voice was broken, and she said only one thing to me. "Come home right now." She hung up after saying, "Something happened." I was in a panic, with hundreds of worst-case scenarios going through my mind. Dad had suffered a heart attack. When I called back, no one picked up, so I woke Jude up, carried the child to the car, and drove crazily to Colorado Springs, where I arrived in front of my parents' Nevada Avenue home and noticed that the lights in the living room were still on. Mom had been in an accident, and the house was on fire. I carried the sleepy Jude inside, placed the child on the couch, and then went to look for my parents. While Reagan was sitting at the dining table, she looked thinner than the last time I saw her, pale, and her hair was disheveled. But it was the baby bump that was beginning to protrude beneath the baggy t-shirt that left me stunned. After a moment of silence, I turned to face Mom and asked, "What's going on?" Mom was sitting next to Reagan, her eyes red and swollen, and Dad was standing by the window, staring out into the darkness outside with his back more hunched than the previous time I saw him. "Your sister is 5 months pregnant," Mom murmured, sighing as she turned to face me. I went to Reagan, attempted to remain composed, and asked her, "Who's the baby's father?" This afternoon, Reagan knocked on to come home. Reagan hung her head, didn't dare look at me. She was silent for a very long time. So long, I thought she didn't hear the question. Then she opened her mouth, her voice as quiet as a mosquito, replying to me, "I don't know." The door. Asking. The person who once made fun of a 10-year-old child for thinking the child wasn't her brother's biological son, was now carrying a baby in her belly and didn't know who the father was. If this were a movie, the audience would think the screenwriter was over the top. I stood there, unsure whether to laugh or cry. However, this was real life, and sometimes real life is more ironic than any movie. Dad was still standing with his back to the window, sighing the sigh of a father too weary of his daughter, who was in her 30s and still refused to grow up. He then turned around, went to the dining table, asked Reagan, "What are you planning to do with the baby?" Reagan lifted her head, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she looked at Dad and answered, "I want to keep it. I can't let the baby go, Dad." Slowly he nodded, then turned to face Mom. The two looked at each other as they had for 40 years of cohabitation, and they understood each other without using words. Mom got up, walked over to Reagan, and looked directly into my sister's eyes before saying, "You can stay here, but there are 3 conditions. First, you retain the infant and raise it appropriately. Secondly, you must apologize to Jude and your brother. Don't just go through the motions. Sincerely apologize." Reagan nodded twice, tears streaming down his face. 3. You never call any child a bastard again, including the baby in your belly. Dad went on, staring at Reagan, and spoke slowly and deeply. "The baby in your belly is innocent. The way it was conceived was not its choice. Jude didn't decide to leave his mother either. You get it?" Reagan wailed hysterically as she heard this, collapsing her head on the table and shaking her shoulders in waves. Unlike so many times before, This time she didn't use her tears to manipulate or shift responsibility. Jude and I spent the night at my parents' house, and as I lay on the old bed in my childhood room, staring up at the familiar ceiling and wondering what tomorrow would be like, my mother stopped by my room before I went to bed. This time, she sobbed because she finally realized what she had refused to acknowledge for so many years. "We're not condoning what Reagan did, but Reagan is still our daughter, and the baby in Reagan's belly is our grandchild," she continued, taking my hand as she sat on the edge of the bed. "We can't shut the door," I said, nodding. "My parents had taught us this since we were young. Parents love their children unconditionally. The home door remains open no matter how wrong a child is. It may close temporarily to teach the child a lesson, but it will never be locked forever." Jude was playing with his toy cars in the living room when I woke up the following morning. I found the child on the carpet, arranging his cars in neat rows, as he always did when he was trying to make sense of things, and he was making engine noises, completely unaware of the heavy atmosphere that had descended on the house the previous evening. Jude looked up at me and said, "Dad, why is Aunt Reagan here? And why does she have a different appearance?" I picked up one of his vehicles and sat down on the floor next to him. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that his aunt, who had caused him so much pain, was now in the same predicament she had accused him of being in? How do you explain to a youngster that sometimes life may be the cruelest teacher there is? I said. "Aunt Reagan is going to have a baby, and she needs Grandpa and Grandma's help right now." Jude remarked, "Is the baby going to live here too?" He nodded, taking this knowledge in the same way children do, assuming it was just another reality about the adult world that didn't always make sense. He was silent for a bit before responding, "Yes, buddy. The baby won't have a dad living here, will it?" That observation's purity struck me like a kick to the stomach. Later that morning, Mom asked me to take Jude to the kitchen while she spoke to Reagan alone in the living room. Through the thin walls, we could hear a muffled conversation, followed by sobbing. My 10-year-old son, who had been called a bastard by the woman now carrying a child with no known father, was already understanding the parallels without passing judgment. Reagan was standing by the window when Mom finally called us back in, her face swollen and blotchy from tears. She turned as we walked in, and for the first time in years, I noticed a change in her eyes. Not the fear, not the self-righteousness, not the defiance. And it was a shame, a real, deep shame. Reagan walked over to where Jude was standing next to me. "Jude, I need to say something to you," she whispered, lowering herself to one knee so that she was at eye level. "I was incorrect in what I stated about you over Christmas. Absolutely incorrect. What I called you is not who you are. You are a good child who didn't deserve those remarks. You are Cooper's son and the grandchild of your grandparents." As she went on, her voice broke. "I took my anger out on you because I was upset about things that didn't involve you. Because I was cruel, and I apologize." Jude gave her a long look before turning to face me and back again. With wisdom beyond his years, he said, "Okay, thank you for saying sorry." Then, since he was just 10 years old, he inquired, "May I go play now?" Reagan turned to face me once Jude left the room. Her apology was longer, more thorough, and filled with explanations of her fear and envy, but to be honest, I stopped listening after the first few sentences because the harm had already been done and words couldn't repair it. Jude dozed off in the back seat as I drove back to Denver that afternoon, and I kept looking at him in the rearview mirror. 7 months later, Reagan gave birth to a daughter she named Hope. What mattered now was making sure it never happened again. The young girl with no known father became the most protected child in our family, and as I watched my sister hold that baby for the first time, and saw the intense protectiveness that immediately consumed her, I finally realized that sometimes the universe has its own way of teaching us the lessons we refuse to learn any other way. I'm sitting in my parents' living room, the same room where everything exploded last year, and it's been almost a year since then. The woman who had once spoken cruelly about parentage never said anything but love over her daughter. Sometimes karma doesn't come as punishment, but sometimes it comes as understanding. 10-year-old Jude sits next to little Maya's crib, watching his baby cousin sleep while humming songs he learnt in school. Jude reaches out to stroke Maya whenever she wakes up, whispering to her, "Shoo, I'm here." For the first time in her life, Reagan is in the kitchen assisting her mother in making dinner. "Go to sleep." Dad is fumbling with the recently purchased Christmas tree and untangling lights while complaining that the electrical wires are all twisted up. I can hear the two of them talking, soft laughter echoing, sounds that this kitchen had been missing for the past year. She is actively doing housework instead of sitting around scrolling through her phone and passing judgment on others. Looking around the living room, I am suddenly reminded of the past year's journey. Christmas hasn't arrived yet, but this year this house already has a tiny little gift that cries loudly whenever she is hungry. No one brings up last year's message or the past, and most importantly, no one calls any child a bastard anymore. Forgiveness is choosing not to let the past define the future. It's giving people, including yourself, the opportunity to start over. If you're remaining silent while someone harms your child or loved ones, stop and think about it. I still remember every word in that Christmas night message last year. I don't know if karma is real, but I know that life has a way of teaching us lessons that loved ones can't teach. It took Reagan nearly a year and a pregnancy to realize what she should have realized long ago. Silence doesn't protect anyone. If you've ever said cruel things to someone, especially children, remember that it's never too late to apologize. You never know what life will throw at you, therefore you should never call a child a bastard. Do you believe I should forgive Reagan in full? Did my parents have the right to take her back? My sister lived off me but mocked my kid. A loser. I cut her funding. She panicked when the ATM declined her $900 request. I said goodbye. Over the course of many years, spending Christmas at my parents' place had become intolerable. The uneasy tension and the phony cheer were not the only factors at play. It was the kind of bullying that was inconspicuous and ongoing. The kind that no one confronts because it is disguised as family banter. But that wasn't a joke at all. Rachel was the one who was pulling people apart, and everyone else was holding back just enough laughter to maintain the peace. Throughout the year, she required someone to humiliate her. The year before, our cousin had recently gone through the process of getting divorced. When it came to gaining weight, our uncle was the one who was punished. Previously, it had been me who had been chosen, but this year, she decided to go with my daughter. My sister is 7 years old. She continues to have faith in positive things. She continues to believe that family is important, and she is a huge fan of the holiday season. Collectively, we had spent several days getting ready. In addition to assisting me in mashing potatoes, she kneaded the dough for our dinner rolls, and constantly checking on the ham that was cooking in the oven as if it were her own personal project. Not only that, but she also desired to wear her red sweater, that she refers to as the fancy one, since it had the little white buttons. Her pride was palpable as she assisted me in carrying everything in. I still cook like a housewife from the 1960 seconds who does not have access to the internet, Rachel exclaimed after taking one glance at our food. She raised her voice loud enough for everyone to hear her. Our mother laughed heartily. Our father did nothing but continue to watch the football game. My daughter didn't appear to be even aware of it. The way Rachel could make anything sound like a joke was one of her many talents. She inquired of my daughter whether or not she had been elevated to the position of head servant. After that, she inched closer to my mother, and whispered something to her. And the two of them chuckled together. While she was folding napkins into triangles and arranging them in the perfect arrangement, my daughter was quite occupied. Simply continuing to work, she did not utter a single word. At that moment, I noticed Rachel photographing with her phone outside. In the first, I was under the impression that she was shooting a video of the family or anything similar. However, I heard her laugh, and then she said something to my father before handing him the phone. Every one of them laughed. I was aware. I made my way over and extended my hand to them. Even though she was hesitant to hand it over to me, I went ahead and took it. It was a video of my daughter sitting at the table, meticulously placing forks and smoothing down napkins. On Facebook, the caption stated, "Look at this loser's kid. She's young and a servant." The caption had already been placed before it was published. It was already well received by users. Taking a look at Rachel, I instructed her to erase the message. I grabbed her by the hair and pulled her into the corridor after she gave me a sneer. Even fury was not the issue at hand. It came from the gut. I suddenly became aware of the years I had spent biting my tongue. I was unconcerned about her ranting, but she was. I just waited there till she removed it, and then I stood there. Someone did not intervene. It's not my mother. It is not my father. Even after Rachel shrieked at me that I was completely insane. We were going to go, I informed my daughter. Neither did I yell. No. I did not cry. As I was saying, "We are finished." A nod was given by my daughter as she gazed up at me. That was the last thing. After putting on our coats, we proceeded to leave. No one tried to pursue us. Nobody said their goodbyes. At home, I brewed some hot cocoa for us to enjoy. I was told by my daughter that she preferred spending time with simply me. Nevertheless, later that night, after she was sleeping, I sat in the kitchen and sobbed into my hands. I was in emotional distress. Not only because of what took place, but also because of the thousands of years that I had allowed people like Rachel to diminish me. I couldn't help but wonder how many times my daughter had observed something but choose to be silent about it. At that same moment, a part of myself passed away. Or it's possible that something awakened at last. When I woke up the following morning, my phone rang. Please explain why I am unable to take $950 out of your account, Rachel. I was unable to take my eyes off the screen and began to giggle. It was a genuine laugh this time. After that, I called her and informed her that I no longer desired to have her in my life. It was my intention. She was under the impression that I was bluffing. Rachel has always been under the impression that she possessed power over me. She had been stealing minor items, borrowing money, staying over for a few days that escalated into weeks, using my Netflix, and asking for rides when she had a car for years. She had been doing all of these things. Every time, I responded with a yes. Following the passing of my husband, I believed that all I wanted was for someone to remain in my life, even if they were a dreadful companion. On the other hand, things were different this time. When I promised her that she would never receive another dollar from me again, I meant it for her. Prior to 9 o'clock in the morning on the morning following Christmas, she sent 3 texts. There are numerous variants of the same thing. It seems that your account is not functioning properly. But I am unable to withdraw the $950. After that, a voice memo. Then there was a call that was not answered. At midday, she called me once more. And I answered the phone. It was as if we were on the same team when she began by saying, "Something's up with your bank." She laughed when I told her that I had revoked her access to the system. That phony laugh that she constantly makes when she is attempting to maintain her composure. She questioned whether I was taking this seriously, because of something that happened on Facebook. I didn't even bother to react. I just waited for the stillness to continue. On the condition that I apologized for touching her and wired the $950 as I normally would, she indicated that she would be willing to move on from the situation. I informed her that I was no longer interested in being a part of her life, and that she should begin to figure out how to live within her means without relying on me as a backup. She remained silent for a brief moment. Then the insults began to come. I was isolating myself and becoming a bitter shell of a woman, she continued, claiming that I was emotionally unstable, that this was about my deceased husband and not about her, and that I was turning into a bitter shell overall. Her statement was that my kid would not even remember the moment of setting the table in a week, and that I was the one who was causing her to experience trauma by turning it into a drama. The remainder of the day was spent with me hanging up. The messages continued to come in. All of her options were exhausted, including guilt, persuasion, and even hazy threats. She acted as if she were taking this matter to some kind of fictitious family court, by stating that she would discuss it with our parents, and let them decide how to handle it. In order to spend the evening with my kid, I set my phone on silent and we spent the time baking cookies. As far as she was aware, there was nothing wrong. Around the kitchen, we danced and played music from time to time. The door was knocked on around 8 to 15 the following morning by an unknown person. When I opened it, there she was, dressed head to toe in makeup as if she were getting ready for an interview for a job. There was no waiting for her to be invited in at all, just pushed past me and said, "We need to talk. I think you're blowing everything way out of proportion." I did not respond to what he said during our conversation. Her rapid speech accompanied her as she began to move around my kitchen, as if it were her own. She stated that she was aware of my distress. Stated that the post was intended to be humorous, because our parents believed I had reacted too strongly. She then paused, gave me this beautiful phony grin, and said, "But I'm here to forgive you. Forgive me." She then sat down as if she were doing me a favor, unlocked her phone, and casually remarked, "So, if we can fix that $950 situation, I'll consider it water under the bridge." I immediately responded by saying, "No." She gave me a momentary look as if I were fooling about with her. After that, she moved in closer, and asked, "Are you seriously doing this to prove that you are not a loser? That your kid is not a loser?" I slapped her, not because I was angry but because I was concerned about something more profound. A number of years spent ignoring criticism, maintaining silence, and maintaining peace for individuals who did not merit its presence. After opening the front door, I pointed outside the building. It was silent as she walked away. In the evening, my daughter inquired as to whether or not her aunt was upset. I mentioned that we were in the process of establishing new rules, and the first rule was that we would not allow others to treat us in such a manner longer. She gave a slight nod, and then returned to coloring. The call that I had been anticipating arrived the following morning. My mother and father did not inquire about what took place. They have just informed us that we need to find a middle ground. When my parents called the following morning, I was already aware of the topic of conversation before I even picked up the phone. Surprisingly, my father was the one who started the conversation. The majority of the time, it was my mother who served as a mediator, attempting to portray herself as someone who did not wish to take sides, despite the fact that she always did pick a side. The voice that I heard this time was that of my father, and it was low and authoritative. He asked me if I had the time to come over and talk through everything. Clearly, I inquired as to whether or not Rachel would be present. The instant I recognized that I was not being invited over to be heard, he responded with, "She wants to work it out." He replied this as if it were apparent. And then he went on to say that she wants to work it out. It was a reprimand that was being delivered to me. Then I responded, "Okay." It was not a sign of weakness. Curiosity was the drive. I was curious about the extent to which they had gone to safeguard her. I wanted to have everything said to me directly so that I could stop questioning whether or not I was exaggerating the situation. I wanted to be able to sit there and gaze at them in order to get a clear understanding of the function that I truly performed in this family. I informed my daughter that we would be returning to the residence of my grandmother and grandfather. If her aunt will be present, she inquired about it. I responded with a yes. Despite the fact that she did not appear to be excited, she did not ask any questions. She brought a book and a pack of markers with her, and she stated that she would be quiet if it was going to be something that was more appropriate for adults. Rachel's car was already parked in the driveway when we arrived at the location. I parked after her, and for a few moments, I did nothing except sit there and stare at the entrance to the house. I believe I was already aware that things were going to go badly. Without further ado, my daughter reached across, removed her seatbelt, and remarked, "Let's just get it over with." The interior was precisely what I had anticipated it to be. To give the impression that she was at a spa, Rachel was sitting on the couch with her legs folded up and drinking coffee. I was the wild card, and my mother instantly rose up and smiled nervously at me. My father nodded once, as if this were some kind of mediation, and I was on the receiving end of it. We were seated. My kid was reading her book while curled up in the corner of the room, and she never once looked up. I distinctly recall thinking that it was quite peculiar. I could sense the malice bubbling in the room before anyone had uttered a word, and the contrast, her innocence, and her silence, all of these things were present. It all began with my mother. She expressed her regret at witnessing us arguing, particularly during the holiday season, and stated that it was evident that things had gotten out of hand and that feelings were running hot. I remained silent and listened. After that, my father cleared his throat, and suggested that we make an effort to comprehend the perspectives of each other. I moved my attention to Rachel and waited. In no way, shape, or form did she offer an apology. I was obviously on edge, and at a very sensitive position, and she remarked that if she had known, I would have completely gone off the rails. She expressed her regret that the post had been delivered in an incorrect manner. She would not have gone through with it. For all intents and purposes, she made it appear as though the entire situation was a misunderstanding between my erratic personality and her mild sense of humor. She continued by saying, "To add insult to injury, your daughter didn't even notice that she was hurt. You just turned it into a thing." I asked her if she would have been okay with it if someone had uploaded a video of her child to the internet and referred to them as a servant. She rolled her eyes and said, "It was a joke. A dumb, harmless joke. The only one acting like it meant something is you." And then, as if she couldn't stop herself, she added, "Honestly, it just feels like you're looking for a way to punish me." She stated this with a sarcastic tone. My mother intervened once more at that moment, saying, "Let's not turn this into a competition. Rachel's going through a lot. She's barely making rent. You have to admit that you've been helping a lot more lately, and maybe that's part of why she feels a little threatened." She was referring to the fact that she had been waiting to feel superior. My kid was ridiculed online, so I inquired about the connection between it and the situation. I received no response. Rather than that, Rachel proceeded to provide a comprehensive analysis of her current financial status. Ex-spouse stated that she would no longer be paying child support. That she needed to get new shoes for both of her sons. She stated that she had 3 debts that were not being paid, and that she had no one else to assist her. It has all been spoken to me before. Every single justification, every single near emergency, and every single guilt trip that is camouflaged as weakness. It was not because I had pulled her hair or called her out that she was angry. Rather, it was because I had cut her off for the first time in years. She said, "You were helping just fine before. So what changed really? You trying to prove something now? You got some new idea in your head that you're better than me. This was the real reason she was angry. She was furious because I was no longer able to tolerate her. Not only financially but also emotionally. I told her that I would no longer be paying her rent, that it was over, and that the assistance I provided was out of kindness rather than obligation. She stomped on it. She laughed, not because she found anything funny, but because she couldn't believe I was serious. "You're really going to do this," she said. "Throw away your own family over a Facebook post over your weird little parenting pride trip?" I stood up, instructed my daughter to collect her book. She complied without a word. As we moved to the door, Rachel remarked, "You really think you're better than me, don't you?" When I finally came to a stop, I gave her one more look. I thought that walking out of my parents' house would be the end of it. I figured that Rachel would pout, complain to anyone who would listen, and eventually move on to some other poor soul who hadn't learned the hard way yet. Then I left without answering, and that was the last time I stepped foot in that house. I thought that was the end of it. She always bounced back, usually by landing in someone else's wallet. I didn't think twice about it until 2 weeks later when I got a message from someone I barely knew. It was one of Rachel's old neighbors, a woman I'd only spoken to once when she helped me carry groceries into Rachel's place during one of her panic weeks. The message said, "Sorry if this is weird, but I thought you should know your sister's moving out. My daughter was in the next room building a Lego tower, and I was driving home from Target that night when I made a decision without really giving it much thought. There are children's clothes and toys by the dumpster, and it appears that she is selling stuff." She did not appear to be in good health. I did not respond to her. I just sat there with the message on my screen. I was driving by Rachel's townhouse when I noticed that the curtains were open, and the front door was wide open. One of her sons was sitting on the front step eating cereal out of a mixing bowl. He was watching something on a cracked tablet, and his legs were swinging as if he had been out there for a while. The interior of the townhouse appeared to be empty, not packed up, empty, and hollow. Although there were boxes, there were no couches, shelves, or coffee tables. Instead, there were piles of laundry, and a cheap mattress pushed against the wall of the living room. I continued driving, and my daughter did not ask any questions. The following morning, my mother called. Her voice sounded thick, as if she had been crying. She informed me that Rachel and the boys were moving into a 2-bedroom apartment across town that was half the size. I didn't say anything at first, but then she asked the question that she had been holding on to for a long time. "Are you happy now?" It wasn't a real question. It was an accusation. She said that Rachel couldn't keep up with the rent anymore. After a pause, she told me that she and my dad had decided to step in, and that they would be helping with the rent now. I told her that I was not happy. I simply felt done. I said that I was tired of being expected to fund the cruelty of another person. She then hit me with the phrase, "Don't come running to us the next time you need help." I responded that I wouldn't, and I meant it. That probably would have been the end of it, but then I received an email from my bank a few days later. I had not informed anyone about it, not even my daughter. I immediately changed everything, including my passwords, security questions, and linked accounts. I also pulled my credit report just to be on the safe side. 3 failed login attempts from an unidentified device, followed by another email regarding a password reset that was denied. I froze. I didn't need confirmation because I knew who it was. I didn't confront her. I didn't tell my parents. I said nothing. I just kept it close. Then, as if to put the cherry on top, Rachel posted a post on Facebook in which she made a heartfelt and ambiguous appeal for donations. The post related to the fact that she was going through a difficult time. My daughter spotted it over my shoulder and questioned, "Is that the aunt who called me a servant?" I was doing everything for the children, and needed a new beginning. There was no apology or explanation. All I was given was a link to a GoFundMe page. After a moment of hesitation, I inquired as to whether or not she had recalled it, and she responded, "I didn't say anything because I didn't want you to cry again." That one sentence hit harder than anything else. She had noticed all of it, the video, the tension, my tears in the kitchen that night. I'd been so focused on protecting her from the storm, I didn't realize she'd already been standing in the rain. That night, after she went to bed, I pulled out a small wooden box from my closet. There were a few things that belonged to my husband, including notes, old photographs, his favorite watch, and a USB drive. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop and watched a video that I hadn't seen in years. In the video, he was standing in the kitchen with our daughter, assisting her in pouring pancake batter. She was very small, barely tall enough to reach the counter. She spilled the batter everywhere, and appeared to be about to cry. But he just laughed and said, "That's perfect. Now you know how not to do it." Then he wiped her hands and told her, You're doing great. I sat there watching them, thinking about what kind of man he was, how he made people feel capable, how he made her feel safe. That's what I was fighting for. Not revenge, not payback, just peace, and the right kind of future. I should have known that Rachel was not finished. Her silence never meant peace. Rather, it meant that she was working on a new angle. A few weeks passed, and the only sign of her existence was that link to the GoFundMe page that was floating around Facebook. It was long, vague paragraphs about starting over and doing everything for her children. There was no mention of why she suddenly needed assistance. There was no mention of the sister that she had publicly humiliated, or the money that she had been taking for years, as if it was owed to her. I did not comment. I did not explain. I allowed people to believe whatever version of her story they desired. Then, late one night, my cousin Kate texted me. Although we had grown up together and shared rooms at family reunions, we were no longer particularly close. She said, "I don't want to get involved, but Rachel is telling people that you attacked her in front of your kid. She is implying that she is afraid of you." I stared at my phone for a considerable amount of time. She is afraid of me. The woman who mocked a child online. The woman who attempted to break into my bank account. The woman who showed up at my house demanding money and forgiveness in the same breath. My mother sent a group text message 2 days later, in which she stated that we should all come over for dinner, that it was time to talk things out like adults, and that holding grudges was tearing the family apart. I did not respond to Kate, and I did not defend myself. I was tired of explaining reality to people who preferred a simpler lie. I wanted to be certain. I wanted to hear one last time exactly who they would choose when it came down to it. She said Rachel would be there. She said it would be calm. She said it was important. She said it was important, but almost said no. However, there was a part of me that wanted to see it through, not to reconcile, not to fix anything. Rachel was already seated, talking loudly, and holding court as if nothing had ever happened. My daughter walked in beside me, quiet and observant, and she was wearing the same red sweater that she had worn for Christmas. We arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. The house appeared to be the same as it always had. The table, the place settings, and the forced smiles were all the same. I hadn't noticed until Rachel noticed, and Rachel smirked. Dinner began in an awkward manner, and everyone avoided the obvious until my father cleared his throat and said that we were here to move forward. My mother nodded, her eyes already shining as if she had practiced this speech. After that, Rachel took over and apologized for the hurt that the video had caused me. I didn't interrupt her and I let her talk. She quickly shifted into talking about money, describing how the new apartment was too small, how the boys were struggling, and how she was doing everything she could to help them. She said that she had never intended to upset anyone. She said that she didn't appreciate being physically attacked and that she'd had nightmares about it. She said that she was willing to forgive me if I could admit that I had gone too far. She looked at me and said that I had always been more stable, that I didn't understand how difficult it was for her, and that she just needed assistance until she got back on her feet. After that, she said, "I'm not asking for everything. Just what you used to give." That sentence said more than anything else. I told her that I wasn't paying her rent. I was being selfish, she said, that I was punishing her children to prove a point, that I was holding a grudge over a joke, that I had always had a victim complex, and now I was dragging my daughter into it. My mother tried to calm things down. Her face changed. It was not one of sadness or shock. Rather, it was one of anger. The kind of anger that she only showed when she lost control. "What exactly is this all about?" Rachel asked. "What is this really about?" My father continued to stare at the table. "Would you like to demonstrate that you are not a loser? Your daughter is not a loser, is that correct?" Before I could react, my daughter stood up. She did not cry, and she did not utter a single word. Instead, she simply picked up her coat and walked into the hallway, as if she had experienced enough of this from the previous instances. I stood up and told Rachel that I was finished. I told her that this was the last conversation we would ever have. I told her that I was no longer responsible for her life, her choices, or her comfort. I then turned to my parents and told them that they were free to support her in any way they desired, but that I would not be a part of providing her with support. Not emotionally, not financially, and never again. No one stopped me. We left in the car. My daughter buckled herself in and asked if we could get ice cream. It seemed like this was just another errand that we could cross off the list. At that moment, I realized that she already understood something that it took me years to learn, that leaving is not cruel. Staying is. It's been just over 5 months now. 5 months since I stood in that dining room and watched every person at that table show me who they really were. Not through some dramatic blowout. Not through yelling or slamming doors, but through silence. Through the choice to sit there while someone insulted my daughter and asked for money in the same breath. I went 5 months without receiving a phone call from my parents. No check-ins. No text messages asking how my daughter is doing. And not even a message on her birthday, which was 2 weeks after that dinner. She didn't ask about it. And I believe she knew they wouldn't reach out to me. I found out that Rachel had moved again, but not from her. Someone forwarded me her new address, after she posted a status on Facebook, begging for donations of furniture. She is currently residing in a different part of town, in a more affordable complex that has linoleum floors and plastic blinds that do not close properly. According to someone who continues to communicate with her, she is working part-time at a used furniture store and is constantly complaining about her boss. Her boys are once again switching schools, and he is blaming the system. My parents have convinced themselves that they are doing the right thing by stepping up for a daughter who is struggling. The same people who used to lecture her about being irresponsible now pay her bills and tell themselves that she is just having a rough year. He blames me for the rent. My parents help her with the rent now. Sometimes they even help her with the groceries. Maybe they need to believe that. Maybe it's easier for them than facing the truth. That they raised 2 daughters and chose the one who tore things apart. The difference is, I don't care anymore. There was a time when being excluded like this would have gutted me. A time when I would have gone out of my way to fix things, to explain myself, to play nice for the sake of peace. But something changed. I do not miss them. I do not miss the forced smiles, the quiet judgments, the gaslighting disguised as concern. I do not miss the way Rachel would turn every room into a stage, and I do not miss the fact that no one ever asked me why I always looked so tense. I do not miss pretending that everything was fine for the sake of tradition. And the best part is that my daughter is doing well. She is still quiet, but she is not withdrawn. She is focused. She is learning how to cook things that I didn't even try until I was in my 20s. She made a full dinner on her own last week, which consisted of roasted potatoes and grilled chicken with a honey lime glaze. She also set the table and folded the napkins into perfect little triangles, just like she used to do. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched. After dinner, I told her it was incredible. She looked at me and said, "It's kind of nice when it's just us." It is. We talk more now. We have inside jokes. We go to the farmer's market on Saturdays, and make up backstories for the people selling homemade soap or baked goods. We spend Sundays trying out new recipes and dancing in the kitchen to old music that she is just beginning to like. We laugh more and rest more. There is no longer any need to walk on eggshells. There is no longer any need to wait for the next dig, the next favor, or the next apology that I wasn't sure I owed. I used to believe that family was something that you protected no matter what. That you gave up your pride, your comfort, and even your self-respect in order to preserve it. However, I now understand that family is not about blood. It is about safety, about trust, about the feeling you get when someone looks at you and sees you, and it is not just about what they can get from you. My parents made their choice, and Rachel made hers. It's not that I lost them. It's that they lost me. And nothing of value was lost. There are times when I think about what might happen if they ever showed up at my door again, if Rachel came knocking, or if my mother called with some carefully worded apology wrapped in guilt. However, the truth is that I don't wonder what I would say because I already know what I would say. Because when someone repeatedly reveals themselves to you, you stop seeking for the version of them that you wish they were. You stop explaining things to them. You stop inviting them back, and you stop watching them destroy the place. Some people call this cutting ties. But I call it finally locking the door. My sister's complaint ended my scholarship and exposed my coach's drug scheme. Now I'm planning revenge that could ruin her new life. I'm Ethan, a 19-year-old guy, and my 16-year-old sister Sophie absolutely wrecked everything our family had worked for over the last decade, and I don't think I'll ever forgive her for what she did. Let me start with some background. Our family has participated in competitive swimming for as long as I can remember. My father, Martin, 52, was a semi-professional swimmer in college until suffering a shoulder injury that halted his career. My mother, Clara, 49, worked as a swim instructor at the local community center for 15 years before taking on full-time responsibility for my career. They gave everything they had to make me successful. I started swimming competitively when I was 8 years old. By the age of 12, I was breaking area records. At 14, I qualified for the Junior Nationals. Last year, I was accepted by 3 Division I universities on full scholarships. I chose Northwestern because they have one of the greatest aquatic programs in the country, as well as an excellent alumni network in sports management. Sophie began swimming around the same time I did, but she never possessed the same natural skill. She was good enough for varsity at our high school, but she wasn't scholarship material. Our parents tried to encourage her, but they recognized where her true potential was. They dedicated the majority of their time and resources to my training, coaching, equipment, and competition-related travel expenses. Sophie was able to participate in local meets and had access to the same trainers, but the emphasis was obviously on my professional development. The problem with competitive swimming is that it's more than simply being fast in the water. There's an entire culture surrounding it, particularly at the elite level. The training is tough. The pressure is unrelenting, and you must make difficult choices about how far you are willing to go to win. Ryan Carter, my 41-year-old male coach, understood this better than anyone. He'd been coaching Olympic swimmers for almost 20 years, so he knew what it takes to compete at the greatest level. Ryan believed that mental toughness was equally vital to physical conditioning. He would put us through activities designed to tear down our psychological boundaries. This sometimes entailed training in painful conditions. Sometimes it meant going beyond what we thought were our boundaries. And sometimes it required coping with uncomfortable situations. Ryan began working more closely with me around 2 years ago on what he called advanced conditioning techniques. These weren't just about swimming faster or growing strength. They were about creating the mental toughness that distinguishes excellent swimmers from great ones. The training intensified, but the benefits were undeniable. My times dropped substantially, and college scouts took note. Sophie was also in Ryan's program, but she trained alongside the other high school swimmers. She did not engage in the advanced conditioning sessions since Ryan stated that she was not prepared for that level of training. My parents agreed with this evaluation, as did I. Sophie had always been more sensitive than me, and advanced training necessitated a level of mental toughness that I was not sure she possessed. The problem began approximately 6 months ago. Sophie started asking questions regarding my training sessions with Ryan. She wanted to know why I was staying late after normal practice, why I went to his house on weekends for extra coaching, and why she wasn't invited to these sessions. I tried to explain that the training was specifically tailored for swimmers of my level, but she persisted. My parents and Sophie had multiple conversations about this. They emphasized that different swimmers require different forms of coaching, and Ryan's advanced program was only for individuals competing on a national level. Sophie appeared to accept the explanation, but I could tell she was still upset by it. Things worsened when Sophie started dating Liam, a 17-year-old male from her chemistry class. Liam was not a swimmer and held strong views about competitive sports. He kept telling Sophie that our family relationships were problematic, that our parents played favorites, and that my secret training sessions with Ryan were suspect. Liam began showing up at our swim events and asking pointed questions about the program. He would make comments about how much time I spent alone with Ryan, so he began researching Ryan's background online. He discovered that Ryan had been involved in some sort of scandal at his last coaching post, though the specifics were never revealed and no charges were ever filed. Sophie started spending more time with Liam and less time in the pool. She began missing practices and turning up late for team meetings. When my parents challenged her about her waning dedication, she accused them of only being concerned about my achievement. She claimed they had never supported her swimming career in the same way they had mine, and they were unaware of what was really going on in Ryan's program. The problem came to a head 3 weeks ago. Sophie had been acting strangely for some days, missing family dinners and spending the majority of her time in her room or out with Liam. My parents were becoming dissatisfied with her attitude, and there had been frequent disagreements regarding her responsibilities to the team. On a Tuesday evening, I returned home from one of my advanced training sessions with Ryan. These sessions typically lasted 3 hours and included intense physical fitness, mental preparation exercises, and technical development. I was exhausted and went directly to my room to shower and prepare for bed. Around an hour later, I heard shouts from downstairs. Sophie was disputing with our parents about something, and her voice became increasingly aggressive. I could hear my mother attempting to calm her down, but Sophie insisted that she couldn't keep quiet any longer, and that someone needed to know the truth. I walked downstairs to see what was going on. Sophie was standing in the living room, holding her phone, while my parents tried to persuade her to sit down and chat calmly. When she saw me, she pointed at me and began ranting about how I was a victim and that our parents were allowing something terrible to happen. My father asked Sophie what she was talking about, and she said that she had been documenting things for weeks. She took out her phone and showed them photographs of text messages between Ryan and me. The texts were about training schedules and technique adjustments, but Sophie saw them as evidence of something wrong. She also had images of Ryan's house, which she had snapped while following me there for weekend training sessions. She claimed that the fact that I was traveling to his house alone was evidence that something was wrong, despite the fact that these sessions were common procedure for competitive swimmers and that our parents were well aware of them. My mother tried to explain that Sophie was misinterpreting the issue, but Sophie insisted she had already made up her mind. She informed us that she had spoken with someone from the State Athletic Commission and had filed a formal complaint against Ryan's coaching practices and the framework of his training program. At this moment, my father lost his fury and warned Sophie that she was risking my entire future because of her jealousy and misunderstanding. He claimed she was being duped by Liam, who didn't understand competitive swimming and was flooding her mind with questionable thoughts. Sophie stated that she didn't care about my swimming career if it meant remaining silent about what she thought was going on. She claimed she had an obligation to speak out, regardless of the implications for me or our family. The next morning, I awoke to see my parents loading my possessions into luggage. They informed me that Sophie had carried out her threat and that Ryan's initiative would be investigated. They told me I needed to go reside with my uncle Robert, a 47-year-old male, in another state until the problem was settled. My mother was crying as she helped me pack. She kept repeating that Sophie had wrecked all we had worked for and that my college scholarship would most likely be cancelled once the probe became public. My father was mainly silent, but I could tell he was angry. They drove me to the airport on the same day. Before I departed, my father informed me that Sophie was no longer welcome in their home and that they were investigating legal alternatives to deal with the damage she had done to my reputation and profession. I've been staying with my uncle for the past 3 weeks. He's been helpful, but he doesn't understand competitive swimming, so it's difficult to express the whole extent of what Sophie has done. My college coach contacted last week to let me know that Northwestern is reconsidering my scholarship offer awaiting the conclusion of the investigation. Ryan's program has been temporarily suspended, and the scandal has impacted the college prospects of numerous other swimmers on our team. The local swimming community is divided, with some backing Ryan and others believing that Sophie was correct to speak up. My parents have been keeping me informed on the situation back home. Sophie appears to continue live with Liam's family and has been cooperating with investigators. She has given them access to all of her documents and lengthy remarks about her issues with Ryan's coaching practices. What upsets me the most about this whole affair is that Sophie never approached me directly with her concerns. If she had any questions about my training or suspected something inappropriate was going on, she could have asked me. Instead, she acted behind everyone's back, making assumptions based on inadequate facts. I understand that she may have felt excluded or jealous of the attention I was receiving, but damaging my profession and our family's reputation was not the appropriate way to deal with those sentiments. Our parents made significant sacrifices to support my swimming, and Sophie understood how important it was to all of us. Now I'm in limbo, unsure whether I'll be able to return to competitive swimming or if my college ambitions are utterly shattered. My relationship with Sophie is probably gone, and my parents are considering disowning her totally. I'm just not sure how she could do this to our family. We've always been close, and I believed she supported my swimming career even if she wasn't as successful herself. Discovering that she's been surreptitiously documenting events and constructing a case against Ryan seems like a betrayal. Has anyone else experienced a family member destroying their job or future? I'm not sure how to proceed from here, or if there is any way to undo the harm that has been done. Update 1. I never imagined I'd be back here so soon, but things have become far worse than I anticipated. Sophie's inquiry has entirely blown out of hand, and new information is emerging that I did not expect. First, let me update you on what happened shortly following my first article. I was still staying with my uncle Robert when the State Athletic Commission finished its preliminary inquiry of Ryan's coaching program. They interviewed Sophie and several other swimmers from our squad, as well as reviewing all of the paperwork she submitted. What they discovered appeared to be far more problematic than simply inadequate teaching practices. The investigators determined that Ryan had been giving numerous swimmers, including myself, substances that were not properly disclosed to our parents or the Athletic Commission. These weren't just protein powders or typical sports nutrition items. They were forbidden substances in competitive swimming. Ryan had described these as cutting-edge recovery supplements that would allow us to train harder and recover faster. He claimed they were entirely legal and that several Olympic swimmers used identical products. He made us pledge not to discuss the supplements with our parents or other coaches, since he claimed the compositions were unique and he didn't want other programs to mimic his methods. I'd been taking these vitamins for over 18 months without questioning them. Ryan would deliver them to me during our private training sessions, and I absolutely trusted his knowledge. The vitamins appeared to be effective because my performance improved considerably throughout this time, and I felt more energized and focused while training. When the investigators evaluated samples of these supplements, they discovered many compounds banned by both the NCAA and international swimming bodies. Some of these chemicals can cause major health concerns with long-term usage, and all would have resulted in instant exclusion from competition if discovered during drug testing. The hardest aspect was that I had no notion I was using prohibited substances. Ryan had convinced me that everything he was providing was legal and safe. When the investigators described what was in the supplements, I knew that my better performance over the previous year and a half was primarily attributable to performance-enhancing medications. This means that every record I established, every scholarship offer I received, and every accomplishment I achieved during this time was tainted by chemicals I had no idea I was using. The NCAA promptly terminated my eligibility for collegiate swimming, and Northwestern formally rescinded its scholarship offer. But that isn't the worst aspect about this upgrade. 3 days after the supplement disclosure, Liam called me directly. I was astonished to hear from him because we had never gotten along, and I imagined he was calling to brag about Sophie being proven correct. Instead, Liam told me something that completely transformed my perspective on the entire scenario. He claimed that Sophie had not actually launched the probe into Ryan's program. According to Liam, Sophie told him months ago that she was concerned about my training but was scared to say anything since she didn't want to jeopardize my profession or upset our parents. Liam claimed he was the one who urged Sophie to chronicle what she was seeing, and he was the one who looked into Ryan's background and discovered the previous controversy at his former coaching post. More importantly, Liam was the one to call the state sports commission and file the original complaint. Sophie apparently urged Liam not to submit the complaint, but Liam told her that he couldn't stand by and watch what he thought was happening to me. He explained that Sophie was divided between wanting to protect me and not wanting to ruin my swimming career, so Liam made the decision for her. When Liam filed the complaint, he utilized Sophie's documentation and submitted it in her name because he believed the complaint would be taken more seriously if it came from a family member rather than Sophie's boyfriend, who was not a swimmer. Sophie had reluctantly agreed to his proposal, but Liam said she never intended to be the public face of the complaint. She had hoped that the inquiry would be completed quietly, and that if Ryan was exonerated of guilt, the whole matter would be shelved without any impact on my career. This discovery significantly impacted my perspective on Sophie's actions. She hadn't betrayed our family out of envy or hate. Rather, she was trying to protect me while simultaneously preserving my swimming career. Liam had twisted the circumstances so that it appeared Sophie was leading the probe. I immediately called Sophie to confront her with what Liam had told me. We hadn't spoken since the night she argued with our parents, and I wasn't sure if she'd answer my call. When she responded, she began crying before I could say anything. Sophie verified Liam's version of events. She stated that she had been concerned about my training for months, particularly after noticing changes in my behavior and physical appearance that she suspected were due to the supplements Ryan was providing me. She had tried to raise her concerns with our parents, but they disregarded them as envy. She told me she never wanted to file a complaint against Ryan, but Liam persuaded her that I was in danger and that someone needed to step in. When Liam filed the complaint in her name, Sophie felt compelled to publicly support it, despite her fear of the implications for our family. Sophie frequently apologized for not contacting me directly with her worries. She stated she was terrified I wouldn't trust her, and she was concerned Ryan had persuaded me to keep secrets from our family. She stated that she had no intention of making the probe public or affecting my scholarship. After speaking with Sophie, I realized that our parents had responded to the incident without fully knowing the circumstances. They imagined Sophie was acting out of jealousy and spite, while in fact she was attempting to shield me from something she truly believed was dangerous. I called my folks to tell them about my conversation with Liam and Sophie. My father was angry with Liam for manipulating the issue, but my mother was curious as to why Sophie had not felt safe approaching them with her concerns. My parents drove to Liam's house the same day to confront Sophie and hear her side of the tale. According to Sophie, they had a lengthy talk during which she expressed how alienated she had felt from our family and how concerned she had been about my training with Ryan. My mother stated that they had been so preoccupied with my swimming career that they had failed to address Sophie's worries or make her feel as if her thoughts were valued. My father said that they had ignored Sophie's concerns too quickly and that they should have examined them instead of presuming she was acting out of envy. Sophie agreed to return home, but the harm to our family bonds had already occurred. The investigation revealed that Ryan had been administering prohibited chemicals to many swimmers without their knowledge, and several families were now dealing with the fallout from their children's tainted achievements. The local swimming community was in disarray. Parents were outraged by the supplements, swimmers were distraught by their destroyed careers, and there were suspicions that Ryan could face criminal charges for giving illegal chemicals to youngsters without sufficient medical supervision. My personal situation remained unaltered. Even though I realized Sophie was trying to protect me, my swimming career was over. The pills had irreversibly tarnished my eligibility for college competition, forcing me to take a completely new road forward. The most difficult thing was recognizing that my better performance over the previous year and a half was not the result of my own hard effort and inherent skill. I had been unintentionally cheating, and whatever accomplishment I was proud of during that time was practically pointless. Sophie and I were gradually mending our relationship, but things with our parents remained tricky. They were torn between guilt about disregarding Sophie's worries and fury over the demise of my swimming career. Our family relations had been utterly upended, and neither of us knew how to proceed. The inquiry was still underway, and there were speculations that Ryan could face more serious charges. Several other families were contemplating legal action, and the State Sports Commission was investigating all of Ryan's former swimmers to establish the scope of the supplement scheme. I was still staying with my uncle while we discussed our future moves, but I knew I would eventually have to come home and confront the reality of my predicament. My aspirations of swimming in college were shattered, and I needed to reassess my entire future. Update 2. The matter has taken another dramatic turn, and I'm not sure our family will ever recover from what we've discovered over the last month and a half. The examination into Ryan's teaching program has revealed details that go much beyond the supplement issue I mentioned in my previous post. After the illicit chemicals were discovered, the State Athletic Commission broadened their inquiry to include Ryan's whole coaching career and business dealings. What they discovered stunned everyone in our swimming community and had legal ramifications that none of us anticipated. Ryan had been running what authorities describe as a systematic fraud scam involving many swimmers and their families for the past 5 years. The pills were only one component of a much wider scheme that included forged training records, manipulated competition results, and financial fraud. Ryan had been charging families a premium for his advanced coaching program, saying that he had connections with Olympic training facilities and college scouts who would promise athletic scholarships to swimmers who exceeded specific performance thresholds. He provided families with elaborate training plans and progress reports that made it appear that their children were making outstanding development. What families didn't realize was that Ryan was changing training data and competition statistics to make swimmers appear more successful than they were. He would report phony times to college scouts, make fake training videos of swimmers performing better than they could, and even bribe officials at smaller contests to record inaccurate results. The illegal substances were part of this scam because they allowed swimmers to briefly achieve the performance levels Ryan claimed they had attained naturally. When swimmers raced at higher-level competitions where drug testing was more common, Ryan would modify their supplement regimens or find ways to escape testing entirely. My parents had paid Ryan more than $40,000 for my advanced coaching program over the previous 3 years. This included training fees, competition travel expenditures, and equipment payments, all of which Ryan said were required for high-level training. Other families had paid comparable amounts, and detectives estimate Ryan received more than $500,000 from families in our region alone. The most distressing revelation was that Ryan had been actively targeting families like ours, parents with unfulfilled athletic goals who were willing to invest extensively in their children's athletic careers. He would discover swimmers with innate talent and persuade their parents that with the correct coaching and financial support, their children might earn athletic scholarships and possibly Olympic success. Ryan appeared to be quite effective at understanding family dynamics and capitalizing on parents' competitive drive when it came to their children's athletic success. He would instill artificial competition among swimmers and their families, motivating parents to invest more money and time to keep their children ahead of the other swimmers in the program. This explains why our family ties have become so strained in recent years. Ryan had been gradually persuading my parents to devote more resources to my training while making them believe Sophie was not dedicated enough to justify the same amount of effort. He had effectively leveraged our family's competitive dynamics to get more money and power. Investigators questioned other families in Ryan's program and discovered similar patterns of dysfunction and financial distress. Parents had taken out loans, depleted college savings accounts, and even refinanced their homes to pay for Ryan's coaching program. Several families faced major financial troubles as a result of their investments in what turned out to be a fraudulent operation. The emotional impact on the swimmers has been severe. Aside from me, there were 12 other swimmers who had been using the illegal supplements without their awareness. All of these swimmers have lost their college sports eligibility, and several had already enrolled in institutions on swimming scholarships that have since been withdrawn. 3 swimmers from Ryan's program had already begun their freshman year of college when the probe conclusions were released. They were promptly suspended from their respective teams, and their scholarships were withdrawn. 2 of them had to drop out of school completely because they couldn't afford tuition without their athletic scholarships. Sophie has been plagued with intense remorse about her involvement in revealing Ryan's scheme, despite the fact that she eventually saved myself and other swimmers from years of further mistreatment. She continues repeating she wishes she had spoken up sooner, but she also worries that if she hadn't acted so quickly, additional families would have been dragged into Ryan's plan. Our parents have been battling with personal shame and financial difficulties. Aside from losing the money they put in Ryan's program, they must also confront the fact that they grew so preoccupied with my swimming career that they disregarded Sophie and harmed our family connections. They have been attending counseling sessions to focus on their parenting style and relationship concerns. The financial impact on our family has been substantial. My parents had planned to utilize some of their retirement assets to augment my college fees, even though I had a full scholarship, but they now need to reassess their financial strategy. They are also considering filing a class action lawsuit against Ryan to recoup some of the money they spent for his coaching program. Ryan was arrested 6 weeks ago on allegations of fraud, distributing prohibited narcotics to minors, and conspiracy. His coaching license has been permanently withdrawn, and he faces several years in prison if convicted of all counts. His assets have been frozen as detectives work to recoup funds for the families he deceived. The ripple effects on our local swimming community have been massive. The facility where Ryan conducted his program has lost the majority of its membership, and several other coaches have been investigated to ensure they are not participating in similar schemes. Parents are becoming increasingly wary of premium coaching programs, demanding greater transparency regarding training techniques and expenses. For me, the last 2 weeks have been spent realizing that my entire athletic identity was constructed on lies and deceit. The swimmer I believed I was does not exist, and the accomplishments I was proud of were the product of prohibited chemicals and falsified competition results. I've started taking classes at a nearby community college to figure out where I want my life to go. It's been difficult to adjust to being an ordinary student rather than an exceptional athlete, but I'm discovering new interests and abilities that I never had time to pursue when my entire life focused around swimming. Sophie and I have started spending more time together, and our connection has gradually improved. She's been assisting me with researching job alternatives and college programs that would be a suitable fit for my current abilities and interests. She's also been really kind with me as I process my anger and disappointment with the situation. The hardest aspect is that I still like swimming, but I am unable to engage in competitive swimming due to my permanently contaminated eligibility status. I've been swimming recreationally at the community center, but it's a very different feeling when you're not practicing for competitions or aiming for certain performance goals. Our family is still attempting to restore trust and communication, but it is a slow process. We are all dealing with the fallout from Ryan's deception and attempting to figure out how to move forward. The counseling sessions have been beneficial, but there is still a lot of damage to be repaired in terms of our relationships and personal self-esteem. Sophie has decided to give up competitive swimming entirely. She claims that the entire experience has caused her to lose interest in the sport, and she wants to focus on other activities that do not involve the same level of competition and possibility for exploitation. She's been experimenting with photography and journalism, which was influenced in part by her research documentation. Ryan's criminal trial has yet to begin, and it will very likely take several months. Meanwhile, detectives continue to review his papers and interview family members to uncover the entire extent of his fraudulent operations. Additional charges may be made when new evidence becomes available. Civil actions against Ryan and his coaching program are now underway, but lawyers have told families that even if we win, Ryan's assets may not be sufficient to completely recompense everyone who was duped. Many families may never recover the money they put into his scheme. Update 3. It's been over 9 months since the scenario began, and I wanted to share a final update on how things have turned out. Ryan's criminal trial ended last month, and while there was some sense of justice, the fallout for our family and the other families involved has been mixed. Ryan was convicted of the majority of the counts brought against him, including fraud, distribution of banned narcotics to minors, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison and forced to pay compensation to the cheated families. However, the restitution amount was far lower than what families actually lost because Ryan had already spent the majority of the money he earned from his coaching program. Our family received approximately $6,000 from the restitution fund, a fraction of what my parents had given Ryan throughout the years. The class action lawsuit is still proceeding, but lawyers do not expect families to receive any extra compensation because Ryan's assets were restricted. The most significant breakthrough for me was learning that 3 institutions were willing to consider awarding me academic scholarships based on my grades and standardized test scores. Because I was so focused on swimming, I never truly considered furthering my education based on intellectual quality, rather than physical skill. I accepted an academic scholarship to a state university about 3 hours away. The scholarship does not cover all of my expenditures, as a full athletic scholarship would. But when combined with financial aid and a part-time work, I may attend college without placing a pressure on my parents' finances. I'm studying in sports administration with a concentration in business ethics. My encounter with Ryan's bogus scheme piqued my curiosity in learning how sporting organizations may better protect young athletes from exploitation. I hope to eventually work in compliance or supervision roles for sports groups. Sophie began her senior year of high school in the autumn and has already moved on from competitive swimming. She joined the school newspaper and has written pieces on child sports and athlete safety. Her work recording Ryan's program proved to be good preparation for investigative journalism, and she is thinking about pursuing communications or journalism in college. Our family ties have greatly improved in recent months, however we are all still absorbing the effects of Ryan's manipulation on our family dynamics. My parents have been a lot more mindful of not favoring Sophie over me, and they've encouraged both of us to explore our own interests, rather than focusing solely on physical performance. The counseling sessions helped my parents recognize how their concern with my swimming career had impacted Sophie and our family connections. They've tried to foster Sophie's interests in journalism and photography with the same enthusiasm they had for my swimming. Though Sophie occasionally appears uncomfortable with too much attention, my bond with her is probably stronger than it has ever been. We've both learned to express our concerns and thoughts more directly, and I admire her bravery in speaking up about Ryan's program, even though she knew it would have major ramifications for our family. The larger swimming community in our area is still recuperating from the controversy. Several other coaches have developed more transparent processes and improved oversight to avoid similar incidents. Parents are becoming increasingly wary of premium coaching programs, asking extensive inquiries regarding training methods and pricing. 5 of the other swimmers involved by Ryan's supplement regimen have also lost their college athletic eligibility indefinitely. The majority of them are seeking academic scholarships or attending college without athletic funding. 2 swimmers elected to take a gap year to sort out their next moves, while 1 enlisted in the military. Ryan's scam has had the greatest financial impact on families, and they are still struggling. One family had to sell their home because they took out a second mortgage to cover coaching expenses. Another family is coping with huge debt that will take years to repay. Ryan's approach has long-term financial ramifications for certain families. Ryan's coaching facility was permanently closed following his imprisonment, and the building currently houses a different firm. The pool, where I spent thousands of hours training, has been converted into a fitness facility. Sometimes I drive past and reflect about all the time and energy I spent there, but I try not to focus on what could have been. I still swim recreationally several times per week, primarily for fitness and stress relief. It took several months for me to be able to enjoy myself in the water, without worrying about competition times or training goals. Swimming is now something I do for leisure, which is certainly better than my previous obsessive relationship with the sport. Looking back, I believe Sophie spared me from years of further exploitation and severe health concerns from the forbidden narcotics. While losing my swimming career was upsetting at the time, I'm thankful that the truth came out sooner rather than later, when the ramifications could have been far worse. I have no touch with Ryan, and am not interested in connecting with him. Several other families have gotten letters from him expressing regret for his conduct, but I don't believe whatever he says will change my feelings about what he did to me and the other swimmers in his program. My parents have become increasingly wary of persons who promise remarkable results in exchange for large financial investments. They've also become advocates for increased control and regulation of kids' sports programs, and they occasionally speak at community gatherings about warning flags that parents should look out for. Sophie and I intend to continue our work to avoid such exploitation of young athletes. She's been working on a series of stories about youth sports safety for her school newspaper, and I'm thinking about writing about my own experiences for my college newspaper once I've settled into my academic program. The entire ordeal taught our family that sports success is not worth sacrificing family connections or financial stability. We're all working toward our respective goals now, but with much better communication and more realistic expectations of what success looks like. I'm not sure I'll ever totally recover from losing my swimming career, but I'm creating a new identity that isn't just based on athletic achievement. College has been difficult but gratifying, and I'm discovering skills and interests that I never had time to cultivate when my entire life was centered on training and performance. This will be my final update on the matter. Our family is moving forward, and while Ryan's manipulation will always have an influence on us, we will not let it define our future. Sophie and I are doing fine. Our parents learned from their experiences, and we're all better equipped to safeguard ourselves and others against similar exploitation. Story 2. My parents threatened to boycott my wedding unless I invited my sister, who had shattered my 5-year relationship by sleeping with my partner. What occurred next astonished everyone. I, a 28-year-old female, never expected to find myself in this predicament, but here I am. My sister Olivia, a 26-year-old female, and I were quite close growing up. We shared a room in our little suburban home, whispering secrets late into the night and daydreaming about our future. Olivia was always the more gregarious one, with a talent for art and music, whereas I was the studious kind, nose buried in a book. Despite our disputes, we remained linked. Our parents, Thomas, 55, and Grace, 53, taught us to put family above all else. Dad worked long hours as a construction foreman to support us, while Mom worked part-time and took care of the house. They instilled in us a strong sense of loyalty and taught us the value of sticking together through thick and thin. Little did I know how much my familial loyalty would be tested in the coming years. Ryan, a 30-year-old male, and I met during our sophomore year in college. He was a senior, charismatic and popular, who shared my enthusiasm for literature. We bonded over our common love of classic novels, and we spent many hours in quaint coffee shops talking about our favorite authors. Ryan was my first serious boyfriend, and I fell hard and quickly. Ryan decided to stay in town and work for a small publishing business after graduation. Our relationship grew stronger, and we soon began discussing our future together. We moved in together after graduation, sharing a small but comfortable apartment near the city center. Ryan was always supportive of my marketing career goals and encouraged me to aim high. Olivia, on the other hand, had decided to follow her passion for art rather than attend college. She worked several jobs to support herself while attempting to establish a name in the local art community. I admired her tenacity and determination, even though our parents were dismayed by her decision not to pursue more study. Ryan and Olivia hit it off from the start. They shared an interest in indie music and abstract art, frequently engaged in passionate debates about the newest gallery openings or underground bands. I was overjoyed that my boyfriend and sister got along so well, never suspecting that their relationship would develop into something more sinister. Ryan and I were doing well 5 years into our partnership. We'd weathered the storms of early adulthood together, including job changes, financial difficulties, and the death of our beloved childhood dog. We had even begun casually researching engagement rings online, fantasizing about a future wedding and the family we would create together. In contrast, Olivia's life was more turbulent. She moved from job to job, trying to make ends meet while pursuing her art. There were times when she'd crash on our couch, and Ryan and I would assist her financially. I didn't mind. After all, she was my sister, and I wanted to support her aspirations. Everything changed on a wet Tuesday in April. I had a large presentation at work and discovered I had left some important data on my home laptop. Knowing Olivia was staying with us that week, I contacted and requested her to send the files to me. She agreed, and I didn't think anything more about it. Hours later, after nailing my presentation, I checked my inbox to find Olivia's files. But there was something else. Olivia had mistakenly left an email thread open when she transmitted the files. My heart stopped as I read the letters between her and Ryan, which contained intimate details and arrangements for their secret rendezvous. I felt as if the ground had vanished beneath me. The two individuals I trusted the most in the world had deceived me in the worst way. I left work early, my thoughts reeling, and confronted Ryan in our apartment. He attempted to downplay it at first, stating it was simply a few innocent flirtations. However, as I shared more of what I had read, his excuses disintegrated. Ryan eventually disclosed to Olivia that he had been having an affair for 6 months. He claimed it began innocently. Late-night conversations while I was sleeping or working late. A common interest for art that grew into something more. He stated he never wanted to hurt me, that he was confused about his emotions. I couldn't endure hearing it any longer and urged him to go. Confronting Olivia was even more challenging. I approached her modest studio apartment, my hands trembling as I knocked on the door. When she opened it, her expression sank. She realized I'd found out. Unlike Ryan, Olivia did not try to offer excuses. She looked me in the eyes and told me she had fallen in love with Ryan, that they hadn't planned it, but couldn't resist their feelings. The following several months were a haze of agony and hatred. I moved out of the apartment I shared with Ryan and stayed on a friend's couch until I could locate my own place. I put myself into work, picking up extra assignments to keep my mind occupied. I cut off all contact with Ryan and Olivia, blocking their phone numbers and social media profiles. My parents were devastated by the news. They attempted to mediate at first, encouraging me to hear Olivia out and contemplate forgiveness. but I couldn't handle the thought of being in the same room with her. The treachery was too new, too deep. They eventually stopped pushing, but I could see the sadness in their eyes every time the subject came up. After nearly a year of treatment and self-reflection, I felt ready to date again. That's when I met Lucas, 32, at a charity auction for the local animal shelter. He was tall, with nice eyes, and a soft grin that put me at ease right away. We bonded over our mutual love of dogs and our volunteer experiences at the shelter. Lucas was kind and compassionate as I discussed my past. He never pushed me to go faster than I felt comfortable with, always respecting my limits. Slowly but steadily, I found myself falling in love again. This time with a man who actually cherished and respected me. 2 years into our relationship, Lucas proposed on a morning trek to our favorite viewing point. It was simple, private, and beautiful. As we started planning our wedding, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The thought of walking down the aisle again triggered memories I'd rather forget. Everything was going fine until my dad mentioned inviting Olivia to the wedding. They contended that she is still family and should be present on my special day. The very suggestion made my stomach turn. How could I celebrate the most joyful day of my life with someone who had given me so much pain? I firmly refused, informing my parents that Olivia's presence would just bring up sad memories and could ruin the day. Lucas agreed with me, saying that our wedding should be about our love and happiness, not attempting to patch relationships that may be beyond repair. My parents did not take it well. They accused me of being petty and unwilling to move forward. They even threatened not to go if Olivia was not invited. Some of our relatives also got involved, accusing me of selfishness for separating the family and asking me to be the bigger person. But I don't believe I am in the wrong here. Olivia deceived me in the worst manner possible. She slept with the man I believed I'd spend my life with. I've worked hard to overcome that grief and create a new life with Lucas. I don't want anything to compromise my newfound contentment and calm. So, Reddit, am I an asshole for not inviting my sister to my wedding? Am I being petty, or do I have the right to remove someone who has badly injured me from one of the most important events in my life? Update 1. I'd want to thank everyone who left helpful comments and advice on my first article. The response was amazing, and it gave me the confidence to have a difficult but essential conversation with my parents. I invited them over to supper last week, determined to clear the air and establish some boundaries. The evening started quite stressful. Mom kept trying to shift the talk toward wedding plans, while Dad was unusually silent. After we finished our meal, I took a big breath and went in. I went into depth about how Olivia's actions had affected me, including the sleepless nights, trust issues that nearly ruined my relationship with Lucas, and the therapy sessions I required to get through my anguish. I told them about the panic attacks I used to get anytime I saw a pair resembling Ryan and Olivia, how I'd lost weight because food lost its flavor, and how I'd poured myself into work to avoid dealing with my feelings. I explained how Lucas had been gentle with me, comforting me during nightmares and consoling me when my doubts threatened to overtake me. To my amazement, Mom burst into tears midway through my explanation. Between sobbing, she revealed that they had pushed for Olivia's inclusion out of remorse. Olivia's life had spiraled downward after the tragedy. Olivia, according to my parents, had lost her job at the gallery where she had previously worked. Her drinking, which had previously been sociable, had progressed to the point that she was rarely sober. She'd been in a number of short-lived, destructive relationships, including one that left her in the hospital with a fractured arm. Mom and Dad felt responsible for not seeing Olivia's problems sooner. They scolded themselves for applauding her free spirit without acknowledging that she may have required more guidance and assistance. In their thoughts, bringing Olivia to the wedding was a chance to reintegrate her into the group and possibly help her get her life back on track. While I sympathized with Olivia's hardships, I made it clear that this did not excuse her behavior or erase the anguish she caused me. I reminded them of all the instances they had assisted Olivia financially and emotionally over the years, emphasizing how supportive they had always been as parents. I highlighted that I am not responsible for Olivia's well-being, and I should not have to give up my peace of mind for her. Dad, who had kept silent for the majority of the conversation, suddenly piped out. He told me a story about his own background that I had never heard before. Apparently his older brother had done something similar when they were younger, betraying Dad's trust significantly. They had never really reconciled, and I could see sadness in Dad's eyes as he recounted decades of stressful family reunions and squandered possibilities. He stated that he did not want the same for Olivia and me, which is why he has been pushing for reconciliation. But he also admitted that he couldn't compel forgiveness, and that healing had to happen on my own terms. Dad apologized for pressuring me and promised that he and Mom would respect my decision regarding the wedding. He also told me that they would attend, with or without Olivia. My parents agreed to speak with the relatives who had been causing me problems and explain the issue. They vowed to stop any future attempts to guilt-trip me into inviting Olivia. After this emotional chat, I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Although my feelings remained unresolved, I felt heard and understood by my parents for the first time since the ordeal began. Lucas, who had made himself scarce during the dinner to allow us peace, was quite supportive when I told him later that night. He held me while I cried, a mixture of relief and anguish sweeping over me. He advised we take a weekend trip to decompress and refocus on our wedding planning. We had a wonderful weekend at a nearby beach town, simply enjoying each other's company and finalizing some wedding plans. We chose our wedding cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, planned the celebration playlist, and even practiced our first dance on the beach under the starlight. This event has increased my appreciation for Lucas. He's been my rock through it all, constantly prioritizing my sentiments and wholeheartedly supporting me. I am more confident than ever that I am marrying the right guy. The wedding is less than 2 months away, and I'm looking forward to celebrating our love with those who actually care about us. I still feel sad over Olivia's absence, but I know this is the best decision for my mental health and happiness. Thank you again, Reddit, for assisting me in standing my ground and prioritizing my well-being. Your support has meant more than you realize. Update 2. It has been a crazy few weeks since my last post, and I have some unexpected news to offer. I got Olivia's letter around 3 weeks ago. The envelope lay on our kitchen counter for days, and I hesitated whether to open it or throw it away. Lucas, ever the voice of reason, argued that reading it would bring some solace, even if I choose not to reply. Finally, on a peaceful Sunday morning, I mustered the confidence to open the letter. It was many pages lengthy and filled with Olivia's distinctive looping handwriting. As I read, I could practically hear her voice in my thoughts, recalling late-night chats and secrets from our youth. Olivia began by acknowledging the grief she had caused me, accepting full responsibility for her actions and offering no excuses. She wrote of the downward spiral her life had taken when Ryan left her, and how she had turned to drink to alleviate her remorse and shame. She claimed to suffering from depression, which had begun long before the episode with Ryan but had increased dramatically thereafter. Her admission that she was going to rehab stunned me the most. She had apparently been in a treatment facility for the previous 6 months, focusing on her sobriety and mental wellness. She wrote of the grueling treatment sessions, group gatherings, and the difficult task of confronting her demons. Olivia mentioned that part of her healing process was making amends to individuals she had harmed. She clarified that she did not seek forgiveness, and respected my decision not to include her at the wedding. Her intention in writing was just to apologize and inform me that she was attempting to become a better person. The letter concluded with a story from our childhood. I stood up for her against some bullies at school. Olivia said that she had always admired my strength and honesty, and that betraying me was her biggest regret in life. I'd want to say I felt a rush of forgiveness after reading the letter, but the truth is that it left me torn. A part of me remained furious and sad, while another sensed a glimmer of the sisterly affection we had shared. I decided to take some time to examine my emotions before making any decisions. After a few days of deliberation and numerous conversations with Lucas, I agreed to meet Olivia at a neutral site, a quiet cafe in town. Seeing her in person after 3 years seemed weird. She appeared smaller, with black circles under her eyes, but she exuded a sense of tranquility that had not previously existed. Our communication was difficult at first, with long pauses and unsure phrases. But as we talked, things became easier. Olivia restated what she had said in the letter, her voice breaking with emotion as she apologized once more for the hurt she had caused. She told me more about her sober journey and the work she had done in therapy. Olivia even showed me a journal in which she had been writing letters to me as part of her recovery, despite the fact that she had no intention of sending them. Reading excerpts from her genuine, unedited thoughts during those sad days was eye-opening. I'm not going to lie. That was an emotional meeting. We both cried as we discussed the past and the sorrow we had both endured. Olivia revealed that she and Ryan had split up just months after I discovered them, their relationship withering under the weight of guilt and anger. She hadn't communicated with him since. By the end of our appointment, I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't realized I needed. The wrath that had been burning inside me for years began to subside, and was replaced by a complex mix of sadness, relief, and cautious hope. After much deliberation and conversation with Lucas, I have decided not to invite Olivia to the wedding. It's too soon, and I want to enjoy my special day without additional worry or mental issues. However, I've agreed to try to re-establish our friendship gradually, beginning with occasional text messages and perhaps coffee meets in the future. Olivia appreciated and respected my decision. She even sent Lucas and me a modest gift, a lovely hand-painted letter wishing us success in our marriage. It reminded me of the cards she used to make for my birthdays when we were younger, which brought back bittersweet memories. I understand that this journey of healing and rebuilding trust will be long and possibly difficult. There are still times when the anguish of betrayal resurfaces, reminding me of everything we have lost. But for the first time in 3 years, I am optimistic about having my sister back in my life eventually. The wedding preparations are in full flow. Lucas and I are delighted to celebrate our love with our closest friends and family. While Olivia will not be present, I am more at peace with that decision now. Our special day will be spent looking forward to our future together, rather than lingering on past hurts. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my wedding, and I wanted to provide you with a last report on this chapter of my life. The wedding day was simply wonderful. Lucas and I exchanged vows in front of our loved ones in the stunning vineyard setting we had chosen. The weather was beautiful, with a moderate wind and clear blue skies that seemed to reflect the delight I felt in my heart. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, my gaze riveted on Lucas's. All of the drama and pain of the previous years seemed to fade away in that instant. As I stood at the altar with my soon-to-be husband, all I could feel was love and appreciation. The ceremony was modest and personal, with readings picked by our closest friends and vows written by ourselves. There wasn't a dry eye in the house as Lucas promised to always be my safe haven, and I promised to be a constant companion through all of life's adventures. The reception was a happy occasion. The meal was wonderful, the wine was plenty, and the dance floor was full all night. My parents were on their best behavior, praising Lucas and me, and making no mention of Olivia. It was great to see them so joyful and supportive. Olivia, on the other hand, complied with my requests and did not attempt to contact me on the wedding day. Instead, she delivered a gorgeous bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite flowers since childhood, to my hotel room. The accompanying note congratulated us and wished us a life of happiness. It was a lovely gift that I valued more than I anticipated. Since the wedding, Lucas and I have adjusted into married life, which has been fantastic. We recently purchased our first home together, a quaint craftsman-style house with a modest backyard. We've enjoyed making it our own by painting the walls and adding a garden. It feels nice to be starting a life together and making new memories in a space that is genuinely ours. My relationship with Olivia is gradually improving. We've had a few more coffee meetings and are now texting on a regular basis. Our chats are still somewhat guarded, but there is a developing comfort between us that reminds me of our previous connection. Last month we even ate dinner with our parents. It was tense at beginning, with everyone trying to avoid certain topics. However, as the evening went, the atmosphere became more familiar. Olivia remains committed to her recovery and has been making significant improvements in her life. She's back in school, training to be a counselor for disturbed teenagers. She thinks her own experiences have given her insight into the difficulties that young people encounter, and she wants to help others avoid the mistakes she did. Seeing her progress and commitment to changing her life has aided me in my forgiveness journey. Olivia recently requested if she might exhibit some of her artwork at a local gallery. I hesitated at first, recollections of her previous artistic undertakings bringing up conflicting emotions, but I decided to go anyway, with Lucas by my side for encouragement. Walking into the gallery, I was taken aback by the transformation in her work. The chaotic, dark pieces of her turbulent years were replaced by brilliant, hopeful canvases that appeared to throb with life. One painting in particular caught my eye: 2 interwoven trees with branches reaching for the sky. Olivia later told me that it mirrored her hope for our relationship, to grow together again after being apart. While we are not back to being best friends, and I doubt we will ever be, I am glad we are striving to mend our friendship. It's a lengthy process, with occasional setbacks when past hurts resurface, but it feels right. We're learning to be sisters again in a way that honors our separate paths and who we've become. I would want to thank everyone who helped me through this difficult time. Your guidance and encouragement helped me stay strong and make the best decisions for myself. I've learned a lot about setting boundaries, self-care, and the power of forgiveness, not for the benefit of the other person, but for my own peace of mind. Looking back, I learned that the healing process isn't linear. There are good and bad days, periods of growth and moments of uncertainty. But I'm pleased of how far I've come, and I'm enthusiastic about the future with Lucas. To anyone in a similar situation, remember that it is acceptable to prioritize your personal well-being. Healing takes time, and you don't have to forgive somebody until you're ready to do so. Trust your intuition, surround yourself with helpful people, and do not be hesitant to seek professional help if necessary. As for me, I'm looking forward to the next chapter in my relationship with Lucas. We're talking about starting a family soon, and the prospect of becoming parents both excites and scares us. Whatever problems come our way, I am confident we will face them together. My family disowned me over for my sister's course. So I cut their $1 million lifeline. Now they're facing evictions and business collapse. Holy crap, Reddit. I never thought I'd be posting here, but after what happened 8 months ago, I need to get this off my chest. My buddy Cassian convinced me to share this story because he says it's the most epic family revenge he's ever witnessed. Buckle up, because this gets absolutely wild. I'm a 32-year-old male, and I own a mid-size construction company that specializes in commercial building projects. Started with just me and a pickup truck 7 years ago. Now I've got 52 employees, and we pulled in $14.2 million last year. Not bragging, just setting the scene for why my family thought I was their personal ATM. My family dynamic was always complicated and, honestly, pretty dysfunctional looking back. Dad, Rick, 58, runs a concrete supply business that's been struggling for years, mostly because he refuses to modernize or adapt to industry changes. He's stubborn as a mule and thinks technology is the enemy. Mom, Carol, 55, has this boutique real estate agency that looks super fancy with the marble counters and expensive artwork, but barely breaks even most months. She spends more on maintaining appearances than actually generating sales. My sister Serena, 28, is a professional Instagram influencer who calls herself an entrepreneur, but has literally never earned a legitimate dollar in her life. Her idea of work is posting photos of overpriced coffee and designer handbags while spouting motivational quotes she found online. When my construction business really took off about 5 years ago, I started helping the family out. Dad needed new equipment, I'd co-sign loans. Mom's real estate office needed cash during slow seasons, I'd wire $50,000 without thinking twice. Serena wanted to start her luxury lifestyle brand. Sure, here's $75,000 to get started. My business partner, Cassian, always gave me grief about it. Dude, you're running a family welfare program, he'd say during our morning meetings. When's the last time any of them actually thanked you? Honestly, I couldn't remember. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't just helping out occasionally when they had small problems. I had systematically become the financial backbone holding their entire world together, like some kind of invisible support structure they took completely for granted. Dad's concrete business was operating entirely on my business credit lines because he couldn't qualify for his own after some serious tax issues from 2018 involving unreported cash payments. Mom's boutique agency was paying rent through automatic transfers from my company account, transfers she thought were coming from some mythical family trust fund our grandfather supposedly set up. Serena's entire lavish lifestyle, the downtown loft with city views, the white BMW, the endless designer everything, was funded by what she believed was a family investment account, but was actually just me sending her $4,500 every single month like clockwork. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Serena calls me on a Tuesday morning, doesn't even say hello, just launches into, "Dorian, I need you to cover something important for me." Turns out she'd been accepted into this exclusive business mentorship program in Los Angeles. The cost, $85,000 for 6 months of networking with industry leaders and mindset coaching. Here's the thing though. We were in the middle of our biggest expansion yet. And I'm talking about serious growth that would determine our company's future for the next decade. I had just hired 15 new employees, including 2 project managers, 3 site supervisors, and a whole crew of skilled workers. We were also financing a massive equipment purchase that was costing us nearly $200,000. New excavators, concrete mixers, and specialized machinery that would let us take on bigger commercial projects. Cash flow was genuinely tight. Not because we weren't profitable, we were crushing it, but because every available dollar was strategically invested into growth initiatives that would secure our future and potentially double our revenue within 2 years. So for the first time ever, I told her something I'd never said before. Serena, I can't swing that right now. The business is expanding rapidly, and I've got serious payroll commitments. Maybe in a few months we can revisit this. The silence on the phone was deafening. Then she explodes. Are you serious right now? After everything this family has done for you? I'm thinking, what exactly has this family done for me? But before I could respond, she hits me with, "You know what, Dorian? Success has made you selfish. Don't bother calling me back until you remember what family means." She hung up on me. That was Tuesday. Thursday night, I'm at home with my wife Isolda, finally relaxing after a 14-hour day managing 3 different job sites, when my phone buzzes. Text message from Dad. You're no longer my son. Don't contact us again. I swear I stared at that message for 20 minutes straight. Called Cassian immediately. What the heck happened? He says when I read him the text. Over 85 grand? Are you kidding me? Friday morning. There's an envelope slipped under my front door. No return address, just my name written in Mom's handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. You are not welcome at family events. Do not come to the house. That's when Cassian came over and found me sitting in my kitchen, just staring at this note like it was written in a foreign language. Bro, Cassian says, sitting down across from me. You realize what this means, right? What? They just declared war on the wrong guy. Cassian has been my best friend since we were 14 and started working construction jobs together every summer. When I decided to start my own company, he was the first person I called. He's got this incredible ability to see through people's nonsense and find humor in even the darkest situations, which is probably why we've been business partners for so long. All right, Cassian says, setting up his laptop at my kitchen table Friday evening. Let's talk facts here. How much money have you actually given these people over the years? I pulled up my accounting software, and we started going through the records. The numbers were honestly shocking, even to me. Dad's business, $340,000 in loan guarantees, plus about $180,000 in direct cash loans that were never repaid. Mom's real estate agency, $290,000 over 3 years in temporary cash flow assistance. Serena's lifestyle, $216,000 in direct transfers, plus I'd been covering her rent, $2,800 monthly, and car payment, $830 monthly, for the past 2 years. Good grief, Dorian, Cassian says, nearly choking on his coffee. You've given them almost $1 million, and they disowned you over $85,000. But here's where Cassian really proved his worth as a friend and business partner. Dude, you realize they don't actually understand how their own finances work, right? Like Serena probably thinks her rent gets paid by magic. He was absolutely right. In all my years of supporting them, none of them had ever asked for details about how the money flowed. They just assumed it appeared when they needed it. So what do you want to do? Cassian asks, leaning back in his chair. I want to show them what "not my son" actually looks like. Cassian grins. Now you're talking, but we're going to do this intelligently. No emotional decisions, just cold, hard business logic. Saturday morning, Cassian shows up with coffee and a legal pad. All right, brother, time for some financial reality. But first we're going to protect you legally from any blowback. We spent the entire weekend systematically mapping out every single financial connection I had with my family. And honestly, it was like discovering an iceberg. The surface stuff was just the beginning. The web was way more extensive and complicated than even I had realized after years of gradual involvement. Dad's concrete business wasn't just getting occasional help. It was essentially operating as a subsidiary under my commercial credit lines because his personal credit was completely destroyed. The company trucks, the equipment leases, even the liability insurance were all flowing through my business credit. His employee health insurance was subsidized through my company's group plan because his business couldn't afford decent coverage on its own, and I'd been quietly covering the difference for 3 years. Mom's real estate office situation was even more complex than I'd remembered. The lease was personally guaranteed by me when she couldn't qualify solo. Her website hosting, professional licensing fees, marketing budget, all that expensive office furniture she loved showing off to clients, even her membership in the Regional Real Estate Association. Everything was paid through automatic transfers from my business account that she naively assumed came from some family trust fund our grandfather had established decades ago. Serena was absolutely the worst-case scenario, though, and Cassian was shaking his head as we documented everything. Not only was I covering her rent and car payments, but her credit cards were tied directly to my business accounts as consulting expenses. She was technically listed as a brand consultant for my company, which was just a clever way to funnel her money legally without tax complications. Her health insurance, phone plan, gym membership, grocery delivery service, clothing allowances, even her subscription boxes for makeup and wine were all flowing through my company like she was some kind of dependent child rather than a grown adult. Dude, Cassian says, reviewing our notes, you didn't just help them out occasionally, you basically adopted 3 financially irresponsible adults. By Sunday evening we had a comprehensive plan. Cassian dubbed it, Operation Reality Check. Here's the thing, he explains, They want to disown you? Perfect. But they don't get to keep all the benefits of being your family while treating you like garbage. Time to cut every single cord. Monday morning, I started making calls. Cassian insisted on being present for what he called the great financial disconnection. We set up in my home office with our laptops, coffee, and what Cassian called our productivity playlist, mostly motivational business podcasts. All right, brother, Cassian says, let's start with the straightforward stuff and work our way up to nuclear options. First call, my business insurance agent removed Dad's trucks from our fleet coverage effective immediately. Next, the commercial credit line that financed his equipment. I requested an immediate review of all authorized users and had his access terminated. How long until he notices this one? Cassian asks. Probably when he tries to purchase materials tomorrow morning. Beautiful. Next up was Mom's situation. Called the commercial real estate management company and terminated my personal guarantee on her office lease. Then I canceled every single automatic transfer to her business accounts. She's going to panic when that rent notice arrives, Cassian says with satisfaction. But Serena's financial setup was the most complex. Cassian was reading from our list. Car payment, rent, health insurance, phone service, gym membership, grocery delivery, credit cards. Dorian, you were basically this woman's sugar daddy. I systematically canceled everything. Car payment authorization, health insurance coverage, phone plan, even her streaming service subscriptions that were somehow tied to my accounts. By noon Monday, Cassian and I had methodically removed my financial backing from their entire existence. But we weren't finished. Time for the nuclear option, Cassian announces. The business partnerships. Here's what they never understood. Dad's concrete business was technically structured as a subsidiary of my construction company for tax optimization purposes. Mom's real estate agency was operating under my business license through some complicated arrangement my accountant had set up. Serena's luxury lifestyle brand was actually just a DBA registration under my company's umbrella. If they want to disown you, Cassian points out, they lose all the business protections and advantages too. I contacted my business attorney and initiated the process of dissolving every shared business entity. By Wednesday, they'd all be operating as completely independent businesses with zero connection to me or my company. How long until they realize what's happening? Cassian asks. Probably when they try to place orders tomorrow and discover their credit has been terminated. But the real masterstroke was Cassian's suggestion about the house. See, my parents live in this beautiful suburban home they purchased 5 years ago. What they conveniently forgot is that I co-signed the mortgage because their credit scores weren't sufficient for the loan amount they wanted. Technically, I owned 50% equity in their primary residence. You could force a partition sale, Cassian, make them buy you out or sell the house. That seems pretty nuclear, brother. They told you that you're not their son. At this point, why should you care? I contacted my attorney and began the legal process of demanding my equity stake in the house. In Texas, I could force a partition sale if we couldn't reach an agreement on terms. By Wednesday afternoon, their entire financial ecosystem was about to collapse, and they had absolutely no idea what was coming. You know what the best part is, Cassian says as we're finishing up the paperwork. They're going to blame each other initially. Serena's going to assume Dad stopped paying her bills. Dad's going to think Mom messed up. The business accounts. It's going to be complete chaos. Thursday morning, my phone started ringing non-stop. Thursday at 6:47 a.m., my phone starts exploding with missed calls. Serena, Dad, even Mom. But the first actual message I received was a text from Serena at 7:23 a.m. My car got repossessed from the parking garage. What did you do? Cassian was already at my office with coffee and breakfast sandwiches, ready for what he called the fireworks display. She thinks it's your fault her car got repossessed? He asks, reading over my shoulder. I mean, technically it is. I stopped authorizing the payments. That's absolutely perfect, just perfect. By 8 a.m. the calls were relentless. I put my phone on speaker so Cassian could listen. First call was from Dad. Dorian, what's going on? The lumber supplier called and said our credit line is suspended. They won't deliver materials for the Morrison project. I let him talk for about 30 seconds before hanging up. Stone cold, Cassian says, clearly impressed. Next call was Mom. Dorian, honey, there's been some kind of mistake with the office rent. The property manager says I'm behind on payments, but that's impossible because... Click. You're getting really good at this, Cassian observes. But Serena's call was the most entertaining. She was actually crying, real tears, going on about how her landlord was threatening eviction, her credit cards weren't working, And how could I do this to her? Serena, I finally interrupted. You told me I was selfish and not to call you back. So, I'm not calling you back. I'm simply doing exactly what you requested. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Actually, it's precisely what you meant. You and Dad made it crystal clear that I'm not family anymore, so I'm acting accordingly. Cassian was giving me encouraging thumbs-up gestures throughout the conversation. Dorian, please, I need help. I don't understand what's happening to me. What's happening is you're experiencing life without family financial support. You wanted independence from your selfish brother, so congratulations on achieving that goal. I hung up and Cassian started laughing. Dude, she genuinely has no concept of how money works. She literally thinks bills just magically pay themselves. Around 10 a.m., things escalated significantly. My attorney called with an update. Dorian, I just received a very interesting phone call from someone claiming to be your father. He's demanding I cease all legal action immediately. What did you tell him? I informed him that I don't take instructions from people who aren't my clients. Cassian nearly choked on his coffee. Your attorney is savage. By noon the real panic was setting in. Mom actually showed up at my office building, which she'd never done in 7 years of my business operating. My assistant called me. Dorian, there's a woman in the lobby claiming to be your mother. She seems quite upset. Tell her I'm unavailable and she needs to schedule an appointment through proper channels. She's insisting it's an emergency. Tell her emergencies require being family, and I was recently informed I'm not family anymore. Cassian was thoroughly enjoying every moment of this. Brother, you're absolutely stone cold, I'm genuinely impressed. But the absolute highlight came around 2 p.m., when Serena showed up at my house with suitcases, crying hysterically. Dorian, they evicted me, I have nowhere to go. Hotels exist for situations like this. I don't have money for a hotel. Then perhaps you should contact your family for assistance. You are my family. Actually, according to Dad's text message, I'm not. So you might want to figure out alternative arrangements. Cassian was watching from my living room window, trying not to laugh out loud. That evening, all three of them appeared at my house together. Dad was carrying a bottle of wine like he was coming to a social dinner party. Son? I'm not your son. Remember, you made that very clear in writing. Look, we need to discuss this business situation. There's no business situation to discuss. There's just you dealing with the natural consequences of your choices. Cassian opened my front door before I could stop him. Hey folks. Dorian's pretty busy right now, but I'd be happy to take a message. The expressions on their faces were absolutely priceless. By Friday morning, the situation had escalated to full crisis mode for them. Cassian came over early with breakfast and his laptop. Brother, you've got to see this, he says, pulling up Serena's Instagram account. She'd posted this long sob story about family betrayal and learning hard lessons about trust and independence. The comment section was brutal, people calling her out for being spoiled, asking why a 28-year-old needed family funding for basic living expenses. She's getting absolutely roasted, Cassian laughs. Look at this comment. Maybe try getting an actual job instead of posting selfies all day. But the real entertainment came when my phone rang around 9 a.m. It was Dad, but his tone was completely different from previous calls. Dorian, son, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. No misunderstanding whatsoever. You clearly stated, I'm not your son. I'm simply respecting your decision. I was angry. I didn't actually mean, Dad, you sent me a text saying I'm not your son, then had Mom deliver a written note telling me I'm not welcome at family events. Those aren't words you say in anger. Those are calculated decisions. Cassian was making encouraging keep-going gestures behind his laptop. Look, can we just sit down and have a rational conversation about this? Your mother's extremely upset. My mother? I thought I wasn't part of the family anymore. Long pause. Dorian. What do you want us to do here? Nothing. I want you to do absolutely nothing. You made your choice. Now experience the consequences. I hung up, and Cassian was grinning ear to ear. Dude, he called you like 6 times in that conversation. They're definitely feeling the financial pressure. Around 11 a.m., Mom called crying. Actual tears, which I'd maybe witnessed twice in my entire adult life. Dorian, the office lease is in default. I could lose everything I've worked for. That sounds like a challenging business situation. You don't understand. This is my life's work. Mom, with respect, your life's work has been funded by me for the past 3 years. Maybe it's time to discover if it can actually function independently. Dorian, please. I'm begging you. Begging who exactly? I'm not family, remember. But the absolute masterpiece came when Serena called around 2 p.m., completely hysterical. Dorian, I'm staying in a Motel 6. Do you understand how humiliating this is for me? I wouldn't know. I've never needed family funding for my housing arrangements. Come on, and you know I can't afford. Serena, you're 28 years old. The fact that you can't afford basic housing isn't my problem to solve. What am I supposed to do? Get employment? A job? Dorian, I'm an influencer. I have a personal brand. Cassian was dying laughing in the background. Ask her how much her brand actually pays per hour, he whispers. Serena, exactly how much does your influencer brand pay you monthly? Extended silence. That's not the point. No, that's precisely the point. You've been living off family money while pretending to be a successful businesswoman. Now you get to discover if your business model actually works. That evening, Cassian and I were having coffee on my back patio when all three of them showed up again. This time they looked like they'd been crying for hours. Dorian, Dad starts, we're sorry. We made a terrible mistake. We want to make this right. Okay. What does making it right look like? They exchanged uncertain glances. Mom spoke up. We want you to be part of our family again. Cool. What's changed since Tuesday? More confused glances. What do you mean? Serena asks. I mean, 3 days ago, you decided I was selfish and not worth being related to because I couldn't fund Serena's $85,000 life coaching program. What's different now? Silence. Let me guess, Cassian interjects. What's different is now you're facing the reality of cutting off your family bank account. That's not fair, Mom protests. Isn't it though? I ask. Because if I was truly family, if you genuinely wanted me around for who I am rather than what I provide financially, wouldn't you have had this conversation before your bills started bouncing? Dad attempted a different approach. Son, we know you've been generous over the years. Generous. Dad, I've given you people almost $1 million over 5 years. I've co-signed loans, guaranteed leases and basically subsidized your entire lifestyles. That's not generosity. That's financial enabling. We didn't ask you to do all that, Serena says defensively. Cassian and I both started laughing. Serena, I said, you literally contacted me twice monthly asking for money. You absolutely asked. The conversation continued for another hour, but it became clear they still didn't understand the fundamental issue. They weren't sorry for how they treated me. They were sorry about the consequences of their treatment. After they left, Cassian and I sat back down with our coffee. So what's the plan now, brother? Now I let them figure out what family actually means when it's not based on financial transactions. The weekend came, and Cassian convinced me to attend our friend Magnus's barbecue. You need to get out and socialize, man. Plus I want to see if any of them show up groveling. Sure enough, around 3 p.m., while we're grilling burgers, my phone starts ringing. Cassian sees the caller ID and announces to the entire party, it's Serena. Everyone be quiet. This is going to be entertaining. I answered on speaker. Dorian, I need to talk to you privately. It's really important. I'm at a barbecue with friends. You know, people who actually enjoy my company. Dorian, I'm serious. I'm in genuine trouble here. What kind of trouble? I borrowed money from someone and they want immediate repayment. Cassian raises his eyebrows. How much money, Serena? Who is that? That's Cassian. Remember him? My business partner and best friend who you've never bothered to learn the name of despite knowing him for 10 years. Dorian, I borrowed $15,000 and the person wants it back by Monday, or they're going to. Going to what? They say they're going to expose me on social media. It'll destroy my influencer reputation. The entire barbecue party is listening now. Magnus's girlfriend Alara speaks up. Wait, she borrowed $15,000 to maintain her Instagram image? Serena must have heard her. Who said that? Dorian, who are you with? I'm with my actual friends, Serena. You know, people who spend time with me even when I'm not paying for everything. Dorian, please. I just need. Need what? Money from someone who's not your family? Long pause. You're still my brother. According to Dad's text message, I'm not. That was a mistake. No, Serena. The mistake was me thinking that financially supporting you people made us closer as a family. All it did was make you entitled and ungrateful. Cassian gestured for the phone. Serena, this is Cassian. I've got a question for you. What? When's Dorian's birthday? What kind of question is that? Just answer it. When's your brother's birthday? Silence. How about his wife's name? What's Dorian's wife's name, Serena? More silence. One more. What's Dorian's company called? The business that's been funding your lifestyle for years. I don't see how that's relevant. It's relevant because you don't actually know anything about your brother's life except that he gives you money. You don't know his birthday, his wife's name, or even what he does for work. But you definitely know his bank account routing number. Cassian handed me back the phone. Serena, Cassian is absolutely right. You want to be family? Tell me 3 things about my life that don't involve money. The silence stretched on for nearly 30 seconds before she hung up. Magnus's girlfriend Alara shook her head. That's ice cold. She really doesn't know your birthday. It was last month, I replied. She forgot completely, but she remembered to ask for money 2 weeks later, Cassian added. Sunday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Dad. The voicemail was desperate. Dorian, we need to meet today, it's urgent. The business is, just call me back immediately. I returned his call around noon. Dad, what's the emergency? The Morrison contract fell through. We can't secure materials, can't make payroll, and now they're threatening to sue us for breach of contract. That sounds like a serious business problem. Dorian, I could lose everything. Dad, with respect, you told me I wasn't your son. Why would someone who's not your son concern himself with your business problems? Because you're a good man. And you know this isn't just about me, I've got 8 employees depending on. Dad, you're attempting to guilt trip the wrong person. You want to know what a good man does? A good man doesn't disown his son over money. A good man doesn't send threatening notes through intermediaries. A good man doesn't try to manipulate his child into being a family bank. Long pause. What do you want from us, Dorian? I want you to figure out who you are without my financial support. I want Serena to get legitimate employment. I want Mom to operate a business that actually generates profit, and I want all of you to understand that family relationships aren't financial transactions. And if we do that, then maybe we can discuss being family again. But not before. That afternoon, Mom showed up at my house alone. Cassian was overworking on some project proposals, but when he saw her pull up, he grabbed his laptop and headed to the kitchen. I'll be right here if you need backup, he said. Mom looked like she'd aged 5 years in a single week. Dorian, can we talk? Just you and me? Sure. We sat on my front porch. She was quiet for a long time before she started speaking. Your father's pride is going to destroy this family, she said finally. Mom, Dad's pride didn't send me that text. Dad's pride didn't write that note. You all made this decision collectively. We were angry. No, you were entitled. There's a significant difference. She started crying. Dorian, I know we messed up terribly, but you're destroying us. Mom, I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not building it anymore. There's a difference. Your sister's sleeping in her car now. Her choice. She could get employment, find a roommate, move somewhere more affordable. Instead, she's choosing to be homeless rather than work. She doesn't know how to work. Dorian, we never taught her those skills. That was the first honest thing any of them had said throughout this entire situation. Then maybe it's time she learned. Mom sat there crying quietly for a while before she got up to leave. At the door, she turned back. I love you, Dorian. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. I love you too, Mom. But love and money aren't the same thing. Took me 32 years to figure that out. 3 weeks later, Cassian and I were finishing up a client meeting when my assistant buzzed the intercom. Dorian, there's a woman here who says she's your sister. She looks different. Cassian grinned. This should be interesting. Serena walked into my office looking like she hadn't slept properly in days. Her usual perfect Instagram appearance was completely gone. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a basic t-shirt instead of designer everything. Dorian, I got a job. Cassian looked up from his laptop. Congratulations. What kind of employment? I'm working at a marketing firm downtown. It's entry level, but they said if I work hard, I can advance. I gestured to a chair. That's excellent, Serena. How's it going? It's really hard. Much harder than I expected. I had no idea how much I didn't know about actual work. She paused. Dorian, I owe you a serious apology. For what specifically? For everything. For treating you like a personal bank instead of a brother. For not caring about your life unless I needed something from you. For not even knowing your birthday. She took a deep breath. Cassian was completely right. I didn't know anything about you except that you had money. Cassian nodded approvingly. This represents genuine progress. I've been attending therapy, she continued. The therapist helped me understand that I was, what's the word? Parasitic. I was living off you without giving anything back to the relationship. What changed your perspective? I asked. Honestly, being completely broke. Turns out when you can't afford food, you start questioning your life choices pretty quickly. And Dad's business is struggling, but he's trying to make it work without loans or credit extensions. Had to sell some equipment, let go of 2 employees. Mom closed the expensive office and is working from home. She's actually making money for the first time in years. And how do you all feel about me now? Serena looked down. We understand why you did it. We're not happy about the consequences, but we understand your reasoning. Dad keeps saying he should have seen it coming. Cassian leaned forward. Serena, what's Dorian's wife's name? Isolde. She's a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital. You guys met in college but didn't start dating until after graduation. She's originally from Oklahoma. When's his birthday? April 15th. Same day as tax day, which he says is fitting since he's always worried about business finances. What does his company do? Commercial construction projects. You started it because you were frustrated with how inefficient construction management was when you worked for other contractors. Cassian looked genuinely impressed. Not bad. How did you learn all that information? I asked. I ask questions. Turns out Dorian's actually pretty interesting when you're not just trying to get money. From him. We talked for another hour. Serena told me about her job, how she'd had to learn basic adult skills like budgeting and cooking, how she'd sold most of her designer possessions to pay rent, how she'd realized that her influencer brand was just an expensive hobby with no real income. Dorian, I want to ask you something, and I promise this isn't about money, okay? Go ahead. Do you think, could we try being brother and sister again? Like actual siblings who talk about life and spend time together sometimes? I looked at Cassian, who nodded encouragingly. Serena, you want to know the truth? Yes. I never wanted to stop being your brother. I just got tired of being your bank. She started crying. Not the manipulative crying from before, but genuine tears of remorse. I'm so sorry, Dorian. I'm sorry for taking advantage of you. I'm sorry for not appreciating what you did, and I'm really sorry for not being a better sister. Serena, the fact that you're here, that you got employment, that you learned my wife's name, that means something significant. Cassian cleared his throat. This is touching and all, but what about your parents? They want to apologize too, but Dad's too proud and Mom's too embarrassed. They know they messed up badly. Tell them something for me, I said. Tell them I'm willing to have a conversation, not about money, not about business, just about being family. But they need to understand that being family means caring about each other as people, not just financial resources. Serena nodded. I'll tell them exactly that. After she left, Cassian and I sat in my office quietly for a while. You think they actually learned their lesson? He asked. Serena definitely did. Mom probably did. Dad. We'll see. You going to help them if they really change? Maybe someday. But they need to prove they can stand independently first. Independence builds character. Cassian laughed. Brother, you basically gave your entire family a masterclass in consequences. It's like you're the world's most expensive life coach. A month later, Dad called me. His voice was different, quieter, more humble than I'd ever heard it. Son, I owe you an apology, a real one. I'm listening. I treated you like a resource instead of a person. I took your generosity for granted and then punished you when it wasn't enough. That's not what fathers do. What do fathers do, Dad? They support their sons even when they can't help financially. They're proud of their kids' success instead of jealous of it. They say thank you instead of demanding more. We talked for 2 hours, really talked, maybe for the first time since I was a teenager. He told me about his struggles, his fears, his regrets. I told him about the pressure I'd felt, how I'd lost myself trying to be everyone's financial solution. Dorian, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not for the money, but for having the strength to walk away when we treated you wrong. Dad, I never wanted to walk away from family. I just wanted to be treated like family instead of like a business. I understand that now. 6 months later, we had Thanksgiving dinner together for the first time since the incident. Serena brought her boyfriend, a guy she met at work who had no idea she came from money. Mom cooked everything herself instead of catering it. Dad talked about his business struggles openly instead of pretending everything was perfect. And Cassian was there too, because he'd basically become family through all of this. You know what's funny? Serena said during dessert. I'm actually happier now than I was before. Working for my own money feels better than having it handed to me. That's because accomplishment feels better than entitlement, Cassian said. Dorian tried to tell you that for years. Mom raised her glass. To Dorian, for teaching us the difference between being supported and being spoiled. And for having the courage to do what needed to be done, even when it hurt, Dad added. As we sat there, I realized something profound. My family was smaller now. Some relatives still thought I was too harsh, and a few family friends had taken sides. But the people at that table were there because they wanted to be, not because they needed something. Cassian was right all those months ago. Sometimes you have to burn down the old structure to build something better. And sometimes the best thing you can do for people you love is stop solving their problems for them. The golden boy learned to say no.